Chapter 1. The Road to Izuku Dorado. Chapter text. Boom. A shockwave flowed through the classroom, startling everyone. They turned their heads to the source of the noise, the brash, blond boy sitting with his feet up on the desk. Izuku had barely heard the boom before letting out a squeal that rivaled the explosion in decibels. Kachan, you got your quirk. It's so cool you make explosions. That's gonna make you such a cool hero. You're gone. Bakugo looked back at Izuku with a glint of pride in his eye, cutting him off. Of course I did. You damn Deku. Who else but me would get such a cool and powerful quirk? His face broke out into a smirk as he looked around at the rest of the preschoolers, staring at him in amazement. Izuku was just staring at him, smile fading slightly. He hated the nickname the Kachan had given him, and he hated that everyone else called him that as well. But he let them, knowing he couldn't stop them even if he tried. After all, you should probably just give up. Izuku's whole world fell from around him, and he felt himself reeling in. Shock, sadness. He couldn't tell. The only thing left was the doctor's statement. He was 5 years old, and the doctors were fairly certain that Izuku wouldn't get a quirk at all. He didn't have the extra joint in his foot, he thought to himself, so why can't I have a quirk? It's not fair. He had been enamored with quirks for as long as he had been able to comprehend what they were, which was, admittedly, not a very long time. He already had a notebook he had been working on, and now the stupid doctor is going to deny him his own? It's not fair. He felt like screaming, or crying, or curling up into a ball, and doing both. But he was stuck to his chair, Inko's hand on his back, propping him up, glancing at him every now and then as the doctor talked about statistics, precedents. Who cared about those? It's not fair. By the time they had gotten home, Izuku was in full-blown sobbing mode, the noise alerting some of their neighbors, including Mitsuki. She came out of her apartment, looking around frantically. Izuku, sweetie. What's wrong? What's the matter, sweetie? She put her hand on his shoulder as she talked to him, trying to get him to look at her. It's not fair. Mitsuki took a step back at the sound of his voice, her gut twisting. The sound of Izuku's broken voice, his sobbing has now brought out both of the Bakugo parents, which started as just a hand on his shoulder and devolved into a giant group hug. He's not going to get a quirk. Mitsuki's head snapped up at this, looking at Inko. It was late at night now, and Izuku had gone to bed a while ago, and the sobbing had ended, so they knew he was asleep. Mitsuki's heart nearly broke then and there. She knew how much Izuku loved quirks. From his mum's admittedly weak quirk to All Might's near-god status, she knew that he had theorized on what his quirk would be, but now, life had dealt him a shitty hand, one that the little cinnamon roll didn't deserve. The Bakugos went back to their own apartment later, and Mitsuki couldn't help but cry for Izuku and hope that the world would treat him right, that the world would fix this mistake, and give the most heroic 5 years old she knew a quirk so he could be a hero. As she laid down in bed, sleep crawling at the edges of her brain, she let out a sigh, pulling the covers up over her. She stared at the roof, willing herself to stop crying. She needed to sleep, but only one thought stayed with her. It's not fair. He was about 6 when he first noticed things happening. It started with people having trouble with their quirks. For the emitters and transformation quirked, their quirk was harder to activate, and for the mutation quirks, muscle pains were a common occurrence. It all climaxed on a day after school had finished. He was the target of another one of Kachan's bouts of anger, his powerful quirk knocking Izuku to the ground. Or at least, that's what Izuku expected. Kachan's palm smacked into his chest, and there was silence, no shockwave, no explosion. Looking up at Kachan through his tears, he could see that Kachan was as confused as he was. His 2 friends in the back were also confused, wings and fingers retracting quickly, the flying one smacking the ground. Bakugo, I can use my quirk, yelled the usually winged boy. Why can I use my quirk? Bakugo looked at Izuku with a harsh expression before recoiling slightly at the sight of him. He was sitting on the ground crying. That had stayed the same, but he had changed. In a split second, he had looked away, and Izuku's hair had turned a golden blonde and was staring at him with golden eyes. Huh. Pathetic little Deku got himself a quirk, eh? He sneered, staring at the boy. Doesn't matter at all, Deku. You're still a useless runt. He turned his back and walked away, motioning for his lackeys to follow. A small gasp was heard as they exited the gate of the park, and one of the boy's wings sprouted back, lifting him into the air before stabilizing himself. No one would ever know about it, but after seeing the display of his quirk, Bakugu was almost proud of the Deku. I feel like I've seen a quirk like that before. Izuku got up and ran home as fast as he can, chest hurting from the slap, face bright with a smile as he realized, "I have a quirk," he yelled, continuing to sprint towards his house. He ran inside, taking off his shoes and throwing his bag down onto the couch. "Mom, Mom, I got my quirk," he yelled, running towards the kitchen, where he could hear his mom making something. Now, Inko had plans for a lot of things. She had plans laying out the warpath she would go on when she finally got Izuku to tell her who was bullying him. She had plans for the days where his boundless joy finally crashed, leaving him sobbing, crying about how it wasn't fair. What she didn't have plans for was for her son to come running into the house yelling about quirks, only for her to see his hair a dark blonde, his smile lighting up the room. She yelped at the sight, Izuku looking at her confused and a little hurt. Izuku, she asked warily. She had heard of people with shape-shifting quirks, and after her encounter with a concerning young woman, she was very wary of them. "What did I say to you before you left for school this morning?" Izuku looked back at her, confusion now the only thing on his face. "You told me to be good to my teachers, and," with a much smaller voice, a blush forming on his cheeks, "that you loved me." She let go of the breath she hadn't realized she had been holding and looked at him with a stern expression. "Izuku Midoriya, you will explain why you dyed your hair, or so hell dash." The sentence died down in her throat as Izuku looked at her with such a bewildered face that she realized he was saying something about a quirk. Maybe I should hear him. "Dyed my hair. I didn't dye my hair." Izuku ran away from his mother, towards the bathroom, and yelped at his reflection. For the last 6 years, he had been greeted by his broccoli-like hair and his emerald eyes, and he had gotten used to it. Staring back at him now, though, was a stranger. With blonde hair slightly darker than Kachan's and yellow eyes, he wondered if he had been hit with a color swap quirk. Inko reached the door just after his yelp, realizing that he had no clue what she was talking about. He looked up at her, worried. "Mom, what happened to my face?" Inko was starting to worry too. She ran to her room and grabbed her purse, yelling back at the bathroom. "Izuku, sweetie, I need you to get ready to go to the doctor's, okay?" While he was confused and a little scared, Izuku followed his mother's request and put his shoes back on, his worry ebbing away as he put on his favorite shoes, the one gift he had ever gotten from his best friend before things became different. He ran into his room, walls, cupboards, and desk absolutely covered with All Might merchandise, with the occasional cameo from the rest of the top 10, as well as some of Izuku's personal favorites. His prized piece, a Lego set of All Might versus Vacuum, a man whose quirk allowed him to control the oxygen around him, with clear blocks making it look like All Might be jumping down towards Vacuum, fist ready to strike. He had actions figures of most of the top number 10, excluding Wash and Endeavor, two heroes that he either didn't really like or just downright scared him. He grabbed his jacket, a Silver Age All Might hoodie, and walked back to the front door, seeing his mom waiting for him. Inko looked over him again and quickly ushered him towards the car. They drove in silence, each of them worrying for different reasons. Inko was worried what other changes could have happened alongside this aesthetic one, while Izuku worried about how this was causing his mom anguish. They arrived at the clinic, and after filling out a few forms, were ushered into the doctor's office. She looked up as the Midoriyas walked in. "Good afternoon, Ms. Midoriya. My name is Dr. Nanako. A pleasure to meet you." She threw a smile at them, calming Izuku down, who had been visibly shaking, although it wasn't from fear, but excitement. "Now, Izuku, your mother here tells me that you're a possible late bloomer for a quirk. That's fantastic." She held the smile up as she talked. "Now, Izuku, my quirk is called Analysis, where I can know someone's quirk by touching their forehead. Do you mind if I use it on you?" Inko looked down at her son and gasped. She hadn't even brought his notebook with her in her purse, and suddenly he just had it. He was already writing down notes in his messy, 6-year-old scrawl, but Inko could see at the top of the page the word analysis. "Well, doctor, looks like you sparked his interest," Inko sighed. She knew he would be in this state for at least the next few minutes, so she gave Dr. Nanako permission to use her quirk. She pressed her palm onto Izuku's forehead and closed her eyes. She let out an odd hum and adjusted her hand, a confused look now popping onto her face. Mrs. Midoriya, I can't sense a quirk in your boy at all. Are you sure he did something out of the ordinary? She looked over to Inko, noticing that Izuku wasn't even listening anymore. He was muttering up a storm and scribbling notes down into his book. Are you sure, doctor? He had green hair and eyes just this morning. This has to be a quirk. Here, I'll show you a picture of him. She put her hand out towards her phone, attempting to pull it towards her with her quirk, but it didn't budge. She tried again, harder, and her phone seemed to wobble but didn't move. Sorry, she mumbled, reaching down and grabbing her phone. The doctor's eyes lit up at the sight, a new theory rising in her head. Mrs. Midoriya, do you mind if I use my quirk on you? She said, flashing her comforting smile again. Inko looked at her confused. But I know what my quirk is. I have weak telekinesis. Dr. Nanako smiled. Just, please, Mrs. Midoriya, I have a theory. Inko looked over and agreed. Nanako placed her hand onto Inko's forehead and focused, and got nothing. My quirk is saying you're quirkless as well. Now, experiment time, she sang, seemingly happy for the challenge. Izuku, could you please step outside? I'd like to talk to your mother. Izuku was pulled out of his mutterfest, looking up at Nanako and blushed, scurrying outside of the room. Nanako kept her hand on Inko's head throughout this, and when he got about 6 feet away, she yelped as suddenly. There was her quirk. She had Inko, and called Izuku back into the room. He stared at her on his way back in, with both a curious and scared look on his face. He sat down on the stool, and Nanako waited until Inko's hand was on his back again before talking. Who knows how the kid might react to this? Mrs. Midoriya, I think I have an idea of what your son's quirk is. Chapter 2. The Adventures of Tintin, Feet, Izuku. Mrs. Midoriya, I think I have an idea of what your son's quirk is. Nanako grabbed her clipboard and started to write down some notes about what happened. Quirk didn't work while Izuku was in the room. Worked right after he left. Further testing needed. So, he does have a quirk. Inko looked both hopeful and a bit worried. What sort of quirk does he have? Looking over at Izuku, who had the biggest grin on his face, and smiled. Are you familiar with the pro hero Eraserhead? Inko, not the biggest hero fan, looked at Izuku, expecting him to know. She was shocked then when she saw that even Izuku, the hero uber fan, was confused at the name. No, sorry doctor, what about him? Inko was genuinely curious at this point, due to both the doctor's strange behavior and the fact that she name-dropped a pro hero. That's fine, not many people are familiar with him. Eraserhead is a pro hero, but he is an underground hero. Most people will never meet him, and he avoids the press like a plague. She chuckles lightly at this, seemingly remembering something. His quirk, Erasure, temporarily turns off his opponent's quirk until he blinks. It's a powerful quirk, and if what's my initial tests have shown, Izuku has something like that. My quirk is like a hero's. Izuku yelled, startling Inko and Nanako. She smiled at the sight of him so happy. Yes, Izuku, your quirk is similar to a hero's. While Eraserhead's ability is a targeted effect, yours seems to affect the area around you. Think of yourself as an anti-quirk field generator. Izuku squealed, and Nanako had to quickly quiet him down. Izuku, I know you're excited, but I need you to be quiet. We have other doctors and patients attempting to focus. Izuku looked down, blushing, spouting apologies. Now, Izuku, if you could step into the room with me. The room she pointed at was the government-mandated security room that was required for quirk testing/identifying facilities. As she grabbed him, Izuku looked up at Inko, who nodded and ruffled his now golden hair. Go ahead, sweetie. Nanako watched him enter and called for her colleague, a man who had hair made of a jelly-like substance. As he entered the room, his jelly hair morphed into long, bright blue hair. He gasped and looked at Izuku. Izuku, meet Mr. Tanyu. He will be letting us test out your quirk on him. Hopefully, we can make it so you can control your new power. She was a little amazed herself when the hair changed, and was now heavily intrigued. We're going to do a few tests, see if you have any control over things like who is affected, how big the field is, etc. Izuku stood in the metal and cement room, happy beyond belief that he finally had a reason to enter the Quirk test room. Okay, Izuku. Now, I want you to focus on Mr. Tanyu, and I want you to try and allow him to have his quirk within your area, she said, flashing him a smile. Can you try that for me? Izuku nodded and closed his eyes. They could almost see the gears turning in his head as he tried to figure out how to turn his quirk off. He started shaking, and Inko realized that he had been holding his breath. Izuku, sweetie, it's okay, just breath. There's no rush, just breath. He looked up at her, face returning to its normal color as he focused on her, and smiled, before quickly turning back to Mr. Tanyu as he released a gasp. For a moment, a single moment, his hair had turned back into its jelly-like substance, before reverting back to the bright blue locks. Mom, I did it, I turned it off. Izuku looked over the moon, the happiest Inko had seen him since his original diagnosis. She smiled softly, hoping that this would change things. She wasn't stupid. She knew he was getting bullied at school, and she knew it was most likely because people thought he was quirkless. He would come home with scrapes and bruises, small cuts and burns, but would never tell her what happened or who did it. She worried for her son, and now seeing him with a quirk, a seemingly powerful one at that, made her feel a little better. As they walked out of the clinic, thanking Dr. Nanako for her time and help, Izuku had two things on his mind. He was ecstatic to find out that he had a quirk, and he was extremely curious about this Eraserhead. He'd have to look him up when he got home. The next few days were both a blessing and a curse for Izuku. He now, no doubt about it, had a quirk, so the other kids couldn't bully him for being quirkless now. Izuku had come into the class to hear the sound of yelling. Seeing what was going on, he noticed one of his classmates, Kazu, a boy with a quirk that made him look like a minotaur, stretching and squishing, stopping after a while, and stabilizing in a 100% human form. It took Izuku a minute to realize that it was his quirk that had done this to Kazu, and tried his best to remove it, to no avail. Bakugo, on the other hand, realized as soon as Izuku came through the door what was happening, having witnessed his quirk beforehand. "DKU, turn your goddamn quirk off," he yelled, running towards Izuku, palms out ready to blow him away. Izuku yelled and started running from him, running out of the classroom, and heard his classmates yelling again as he would later find out, Kazu morphed back into his minotaur form. "Kachan, please. I didn't mean to do it. I can control it yet." Izuku was red-faced and breathing hard. He wasn't used to sprinting for this long, and he was only little. Luckily, Bakugo was quickly stopped by the teachers, who themselves were very confused why their quirks weren't working. Bakugo noticed their confused glances towards each other and started to yell at them. "It's all dumb Deku's fault. It's his damn quirk that changed Kazu." Izuku was stopped by one of the teachers as the rest took Bakugo back to the classroom. His teacher was very confused at his new look, as well as the fact that Bakugo seemed to think he had a quirk. "Izuku, my boy, is what Bakugo said true? Did you do that to Kazu?" Now Mr. Yukon was a smart man. He knew about Izuku, the quirkless boy in year 1, but hadn't had the chance to meet Izuku himself before. Izuku looked at Mr. Yukon, tears starting to fall down his face as words started to rush out of him. "Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I only really got my quirk yesterday. I can't really control who gets affected yet. Please don't get me in true dash." Unko stopped his muttering with a firm hand to the shoulder. "Young man, I would never get you in trouble for this. It's not your fault, but I think it would be best if your mother came and picked you up today." He looked at the boy, who was still sniffling, with a sad smile. "I'll talk to the principal and see if we can sort this all out." Izuku was sitting outside of the principal's office, waiting for his mom, when he heard the familiar sounds of stomping heading his way. "DKU, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Bakugo stared at him maniacally and pulled his fist back. "Why the hell did you do that to Kazu?" Izuku flinched at the sight of him winding up for a punch and then went into his explanation. "Bakugo, I didn't mean to turn his quirk off. I can't really control it at the moment, but I'm trying to." Izuku looked up at him, and Bakugo was astonished to see the determination in his eyes, along with a spark that Bakugo had been trying to put out for years, now brighter than ever before. "And my doctor says it's a really cool quirk, and she said that there is a hero who has a quirk like mine." Bakugo snorted, "Dumb Deku. I call bullshit. No pro hero would have such a coward's quirk, turning people's quirks off. How stupid. Izuku's face fell at this, before sitting upright and yelling back at him. There is. His name is Eraserhead, and if he can be a pro hero, then I can too. Izuku was red-faced out of anger and embarrassment, never having yelled at Bakugo before. Looking at him, he seemed to have sort of a scowl mixed with a smirk, turning and walking away. No one would ever know it, but that day, he found a bit of respect for Deku, finally willing to stand up to me. He was muttering to himself as he walked, outside of Izuku's hearing. Good. Maybe he could make himself a hero, never the top hero. Of course, that's my job. Inko had arrived at the school and was walking through the front door when she heard Izuku yelling, and hearing what he was saying, felt a swell of pride in her chest. She had been waiting for the day that his confidence would return, that he would be able to smile without the smallest doubt about the future. She walked up to him to see Bakugo walking away, a smile on his face, muttering to himself, "I guess it's contagious." She laughed at the thought, alerting Izuku to her presence. "Hi, Mom," he practically yelled, running at her and tackling her into a hug. "Mr. Yukon says I have to go home. I think I hurt one of my classmates." Inko was shocked at first, but could see why. She knew that some of his classmates had mutation-type quirks, and from the testing they did with Dr. Nanako, she could only imagine how the student affected was feeling, having his body morph like that. "No, sweetie, don't worry about that. I'm sure you didn't mean to hurt anyone." Inko could see the tears welling in his eyes. "Now, it's your first day with a quirk. I would be surprised if there were no accidents. You want to know what happened when I first used my quirk?" Izuku's head snapped up to meet her eyes. "Yeah, what happened, Mom? What happened?" Inko was glad for his obsession with quirks. She knew he was good at analysis already, for a 6-year-old, and it was an easy way to distract him from things. "So you know how I can pull small objects, right, sweetie? Well, the first time I used my quirk, I tried to pull a book towards me, and it smacked one of my classmates in the face. He was so confused, and I got into trouble for that." She smiled down at him, and he was laughing. "So you see, Izuku, everyone has a rough first time with their quirk. It's nothing to worry about." He was giggling by the end of the story, and Inko knew that he was going to be okay. She knew that the boy from before his first diagnosis was back, and she was already mentally preparing herself for his hero career, cause she knew her son, and she knew he would make an excellent hero. When they arrived back to his house, Izuku ran straight to the computer room, begging Inko to let him on it. She sighed, ready for another 2 hours of All Might, saying, "I am here," and logged in for him. She nearly gasped as he closed the tab that had been open since the video came out, and instead searched for Eraserhead. He started reading up on everything that the internet had on Eraserhead, and filled almost 7 pages in his notebook about him, the closest to All Might's analysis at 9.5 pages. Most heroes had 2 to 4 pages. She smiled at the sight and went to start cooking dinner. It's totally a Katsudon night. The next day was a little better. His classmates were told about his quirk, and while there was outrage that Deku of all people was making it so none of them could use their quirks, Bakugo quickly shut them up. "Hi extras, you know you're not allowed to use your quirks at school anyway. So Deku here is doing you all a favor and making it so it's literally impossible to break that rule. Not his fault he can control it. Dumbass only got it 2 days ago." Izuku was gobsmacked. Had Kachan just stood up for Izuku? Surely not. I'm dreaming. Or I went into a coma after Kachan hit me in the park. Surely this can be happening, right? He pinched himself quickly to see if he woke up, and had to suppress a squeal after he didn't. Kachan stood up for me. Maybe things are going to get better. Izuku was right, sort of. His relationship with Kachan improved a lot that week, and while he still called him Deku, he was nicer overall. Izuku wondered if his quirk had a mental impact on his anger. His classmates were furious with him, and he acquired a new person who seemed to think that someone had to fill the spot Kachan had apparently left. His name was Isai, and he hated the fact that he couldn't use his flashy quirk anymore. It was similar to Kachan's, if a little more focused. He could fire plasma-like beams from his hands, like the ones from those apocalypse games a few hundred years ago. His first encounter with Isai was while he was walking home. "Hey off switch." The nickname was accompanied by a shove to the back, sending Izuku sprawling across the ground. Isai was 8 years old and was much bigger than Izuku. You must think you're so much better than everyone, shutting off everyone's quirks like that. He pulled back his leg to kick him, and Izuku shut his eyes. The kick never came. Standing above him was another boy, staring Isai down, hand on his shoulder. Now, dude, come on. That's not cool. You can just hurt people like that, man. The stranger had a nonchalant tone as if he did this all the time. Oh, yeah. Tintin, what you gonna do about it? Isai turned away from Izuku and lunged at the other boy, who promptly took the punch right in the face with a small shout. He got up, very confused, looking at his hands. It took him a second, but Izuku recognized the look. You don't have your quirk right now? I'm sorry. The boy looked at Izuku and nodded. Thanks for the heads up, dude, flashing Izuku a smile that rivaled All Might's. Isai started to throw more punches, but now that he knew he couldn't use his quirk, the other boy went on the offensive and with one last jab to the face, knocked Isai onto the ground, who then got up and walked away. And before he left hearing range, the boy who helped Izuku did a bodybuilder pose and yelled, "Power!" Isai looked back, his face curled into a snarl, before shoving his hands in his pockets and storming off. Izuku looked up at the boy, who admittedly did look a little like Tintin. Thank you so much. I thought he was gonna hurt me for sure. The boy looked back at him, after making sure that Isai had actually left. That's all good, dude. I couldn't just stand by and let him hurt you now, could I? At this, Izuku's eyes lit up. Wow, you're just like a hero. Hi. My name is Izuku, what's yours? The boy laughed. Thanks, dude. My name is Mirio. Nice to meet ya. Say, how did you know that I couldn't use my quirk? Izuku froze. Well, this is it, he thought. After hearing I shut down his quirk, he'll probably get mad like I did. Well, you see, the thing is, Mirio laughed at this, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Whoa, man, chill out, I don't bite. He flashed another smile Izuku's way, and he instantly felt better. It's my quirk. I turn other people's quirks off. He looked down at the ground. I only got it around 2 days ago, so I can really control it, and people are angry with me about it. It's about a 10-meter radius around me, although the doctors seem to think it will increase as I get older. Mirio looked at the small, shy boy in front of him. He looked about 6, and yet he got his quirk yesterday? Must be a late bloomer. He patted Izuku's shoulder again and flashed him a smile when he looked up. Well, that's an amazing quirk. You're just like the underground hero, Eraserhead. Izuku beamed at this statement, now in hero fan mode. I know, right? I was researching him last night. He's so cool. It's sad that he avoids the spotlight, 'cause he is amazing. Did you know he basically fights quirkless? I want to be a hero just like him. I wonder where he lie. Izuku stopped his mutterfest halfway as he saw Mirio's face become a mix of concerned and amused. Mirio laughed again and wrapped his arm around his shoulder. Well, if it's training you need, my mom signed me up for a martial arts course around here that has a licensed quirk assistant. They usually help me by setting up walls for me to walk through, increasing in thickness, changing materials etc. Maybe you should swing around. He grabbed out a piece of paper and wrote some stuff down. It's on Wednesdays, 6:30 to 8:30. Hope to see you there, Izuku, before sprinting off. Izuku looked down at the piece of paper in his hands. On it was the name Mirio Tagoda and a phone number. Below that read a short message. If that dude or any others bother you, call me. Laughing face. Izuku's eyes started to well up at this. I made a friend. Chapter 3. A Meeting and an Accident. Inko wasn't surprised when Izuku came running through. It seemed to be becoming a habit. Welcome back, Izuku. How was school today? He ran into the kitchen, and Inko saw the card he was holding. What's that, sweetie? Izuku held the card up to her. Etsuya Kendo, Martial Arts and Quirk Dojo, followed by their phone number. What's this, sweetie? You want to do martial arts? She was confused. She knew that he wanted to be a hero, but he had never given any interest in martial arts before. Maybe he just wants the quirk training. Why, yay, I made a friend today. He saved me from a bully and invited me to help control my quirk. Inko looked at him, worried. A bully, Izuku? Who was it? She hoped beyond hope that he would tell her this time. She couldn't stand him getting hurt for things she couldn't control. He gulped and looked at the floor, panicking internally. Well, his name is Isai, and he was yelling at me for turning his quirk off. She thanked whatever gods had blessed her. he had finally told her. Time to initiate Operation Mama Bear. Well then, if he wants to hurt you for something you can control yet, I'm just gonna have to speak with the principal about this. Izuku let out a small sigh, looking at her, eyes wide with gratitude. So can I go, Mom? I don't want to let Mirio down. He's gonna be a real hero one day. But he can use his quirk to help people if I can control it. It was Inko's turn to sigh, as she looked over the card. Sure, sweetie. I'll call and book you in for the introductory session. She was nearly knocked over as the small golden fluff ball slammed into her, hugging her midsection. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He was ecstatic. He would get to hang out with a proper friend, one who didn't yell at him. And so Inko booked Izuku for the introductory session. Come 6 p.m. Wednesday night, Izuku was in his sports gear, visibly vibrating with excitement. Mum, come on. We're gonna be late. See him when. He was bouncing up and down, and Inko was starting to think that this might be a good outlet for all his energy. They hopped into the car and arrived shortly at the dojo. Izuku sprinted to the front door, running inside before he was stopped by shouting. He looked over at where the students were warming up and saw a boy with a bird head yelling as it morphed into a regular head with black hair. Izuku, are you there? Mirio had walked over to Izuku, looking confused at why he had a horrified look on his face until he saw what had happened to the birdman. Whoa, is that you, Tokoyami? The previously bird-headed boy nodded, looking at himself in the mirror with a look of shock and fear. A man walked over to Mirio and Izuku, next to Inko. Well, I have to say I didn't really believe you, Ms. Midoriya, but seeing Tokoyami change like that, can he really be anything else? My name is Itsuya Kendo. Welcome, Izuku. He looked over to his students quickly, noting their panic. Mirio said you might be coming. Would you care to tell me why you wanted to come here? Well, I wanted to come because my quirk doesn't really help me be a hero. If I wanted to fight someone, I would still have to know how to beat them even if I turned their quirk off. He pointed to Mirio, who was smiling and laughing at the mutter storm. And Mirio was so cool when he saved me. And he suggested that I could come here to learn martial arts and how to control my quirk, and Kendo laughed as well, placing a hand on his shoulder. Admirable goals, young man. It's good to see someone so young so prepared for his future. He turned to Inko. Okay, he can join in the training, but I have a few questions first. How big is the range of this anti-quirk field he projects? Is it just turning off quirks, or can he do other things with them? And can he control who gets turned off? Inko's smile faded. Well, Mr. Kendo, his quirk only really manifested about a week ago, so we aren't sure. It currently has a range of about a 15 m radius around him, but if he focuses he can get it to 20 m. So far it has only shut quirks off, but we don't know if that's all it can do. Although he has said he sees weird colors around people every now and then. He currently can control who is affected, although he has done it once. It seems to have been a fluke. She looked up from the notes Dr. Nanako had given her about his quirk, pointing to a few of the dot points listed. These are the notes given to us by his doctor, and I can give you a copy if you would like. Kendo seemed happy with this, nodding, before walking into his office, coming out a minute later holding a GI and white belt. Here you go, little man. Go out this on and come join us on the floor. Izuku sprinted over to the changing rooms. Coming out dressed is his new GI. He ran over to the padded floor, and Itsuya introduced him. Everyone, this is Izuku Midoriya. He will be joining us from now on. His quirk is the reason yours aren't working, and also why Tokoyami has. Well, I'm not really sure what he did. Anyway, he is here to learn just like the rest of you, so please be nice. The more he can focus, the quicker you all get your quirks back. Izuku was terrified. The nice teacher man had just told everyone that it was his fault they couldn't use their powers. Oh God, they were gonna hate him. They're gonna bully him like Isai and Kachan and the rest of his classmates. They're gonna. A boy with long blue hair yelled out, interrupting his panic attack. Wow, your quirk is awesome. How does it work? Izuku was really confused. A boy with pure blue hair spoke up as well. Dude, that's such a cool power. Izuku didn't know what to say. Did they like his quirk? Tokoyami looks cool as a normal dude. They liked his quirk. He was shocked. He hadn't had it for very long, but he had already figured out that most people hated not having their quirk. That's a very impressive quirk, Midoriya, a young girl with a big black ponytail stated, again snapping him out of his overthinking. My name is Momo. Master said you couldn't control it yet. Why not? Izuku was worried again now. God, this class is going to be a roller coaster, he thought inwardly. I only got it about a week ago, so I haven't really learned how to use it properly yet. I'm sorry for turning your quirks off. He looked at the ground sheepishly. Midoriya. He looked up to see Tokoyami right in front of him. Do not worry about it. I am actually kind of enjoying the feeling of hair. He smiled at the boy and started to giggle. You look kinda cool with a bird head though. Kendo looked at his group with pride and smiled. He knew he had a good group of kids, but to not even get angry at having their quirks removed, he felt like a super proud dad. And so that was his new routine for the next 4 years. He would go to his martial arts training, which became more frequent as he started learning more and more types after Itsuya suggested. He learned to use things like a bow staff, as well as basic sword fighting and basic archery. He wanted Izuku to be multi-talented, especially if he wanted to be a hero, but he knew that no child could keep up with a super intense schedule. He continued his quirk training, and by the age of 10, he had rudimentary control over who was affected by his anti-quirk field, being able to keep 2 to 3 people unaffected at one time. He quickly made friends with Momo and Tokoyami, sharing the same drive to be a hero as them. But because he was one of Itsuya's favorites, he found himself spending a lot of time with his master's daughter, Itsuka. The 4 of them pushed each other, both physically and mentally, and they quickly rose in popularity with the rest of the dojo. Itsuya was always saying how his big 4 under 12s were going to take the hero course by storm. Izuku blushed every time he said that, usually embarrassed at the volume he would say it with. He pushed himself at school as well and left his primary school as the top student in his year, Bakugo nearly killing him when he got second. Bakugo, he had lost touch with Bakugo for the most part, focusing heavily on his training-heavy lifestyle. They hadn't been real friends since a few weeks before Bakugo got his quirk, so that hadn't changed. But the animosity, the hatred towards Izuku was gone, and Bakugo just left him alone. He continued to train with Mirio, and eventually his 2 friends, Neijire and Tamaki, the 12-year-olds agreeing with Mirio on how cool Izuku's quirk was. They were glad to get extra training, all 4 of them aiming for UA's hero course. All Might went there, so it has to be the best. Izuku could be quoted near daily, his adoration for All Might apparent, second only to his very favorite hero. He knew how his favorite worked. He stuck to the shadows, avoided the public, defended in near secret, and how much he hated the press. That's why Izuku always said that All Might was his favorite hero. It was believable, and Izuku knew that the fewer people know about Eraserhead, the better he could work. After a little digging, he found that Eraserhead was a UA alumni as well, further fueling his dream to attend the hero course. He would get into UA, he would become a pro hero, and he would work as hard as he could until he could meet his ultimate idol, Eraserhead. Help, someone help. It was a bright sunny day, and Toshinori Yagi sighed as he finished buying groceries. He was in his civilian form, as he had to be nowadays for at least 3.5 hours a day. He looked over to the explosion and the scream and saw a large pile of sludge. It was moving down the street, and Yagi could see that it was holding a cash register and a brown bag, spilling money. He could hear the civilians on the street muttering between themselves. What was that, a villain? Man, he must be stupid, attacking a store in broad daylight like this. There's going to be a hero here in minutes. Yagi looked around to check that there was no one watching him and inflated into his hero form. Never fear, citizens, he announced in his cheerful voice, for I am here. He jumped after the sludge villain, who had noticed his announcement, and dived down a manhole. Izuku had just gotten out of class, Bakugo giving him death glares as the teacher announced that Izuku would be taking the UA entrance exam as well. He was 17 now, just finishing high school, and looked back at the last couple of years, smiling at his progress. He started to walk towards the arcade, where he was meeting up with Itsuka and Momo. He had practically mastered his quirk, and not to toot his own horn or anything, but it was a really damn good one, and had been able to make his field basically keep the on switch on at all times, only turning quirks off as he needed. Bakugo was the happiest he had been in a while the day Izuku had mastered it, and Izuku still wasn't sure he heard what followed right. Nice job, Deku. Maybe you will be a hero. The range of his quirk has exploded as his age and physical strength increased. As he was now, he was able to affect the quirks of anyone within a maximum of 100 m radius of him, a number that had even him astounded, although he could make the field smaller if he wanted to. And that wasn't all his abilities could do. A little bit after his 11th birthday, she showed him one of his dad's old quirk analysis books. I know Mom always said that followed after Dad, but I didn't know she meant that so literally. The first 12 pages were a self-analysis, detailing his quirk and his job as a supporting sidekick. Apparently, he had the ability to see the quirk in people, and he described this sight as almost seeing a textured silhouette of the person. He also had the ability to affect the quirks of those around him, getting him quite popular as a sidekick. His name was Booster, and as well as this quirk sight, as he called it, he had the ability to either enhance or nullify the quirks of anyone he touched for around 10 minutes. When in a boosted state, the quirks of those he touched went into overdrive, acting with more power, faster, and requiring less energy on the user's part. Izuku knew he had gotten the nullification part of the quirk, given an area of effect most likely because of his mother's quirk, but was wondering if he had gotten the quirk sight and booster parts when the quirk was passed down, and after a few training sessions with Mirio and the gang, he was delighted to see that, through training, he was able to make it so he could have this quirk sight as a background activity. The booster component of the quirk was harder. He was able to do it, but for now, it took way too much of his stamina to keep it up for very long. It did get easier as he trained it more, but he could only boost someone for about 3 minutes before falling unconscious. He knew that he had to practice this, as it was an amazing ability, but it took a lot out of him. His dad had tried to keep the other part of his quirk a secret, much like Eraserhead does, as his opponents knowing that he could turn off their quirk for 10 minutes with a touch would lead to more long-range encounters. He was a respectable rank in his martial art, around 46th in the country, and went to every tournament his best friend, Momo, 11th in the country, participated in to cheer her on. Tokoyami had quit after an accident with Dark Shadow on one of Izuku's sick days had left him and another student injured, and Izuku hadn't seen him since. Itsuka was doing well in her training, about 16th in the country for their martial arts, and an avid boxer. He looked at himself as he walked past a shop front and grinned. He had been training intensely for almost 13 years now, and boy, had it paid off. He stood at 6" 3 foot and had a body that most athletes would kill each other for. He had realized a while ago, talking with Mirio, that the entrance exam for UA was most likely going to be robots, and had started to plan for that. According to Mirio, you were allowed to bring up to 3 support items with you, as long as you made and designed them yourself. Izuku had grinned when he heard that, already planning, knowing exactly what he was going to make. He had been on one of his morning runs when he passed by Dagoba Municipal Beach and was disgusted by the state it was in. He took it upon himself to clean the beach. After all, a hero's job isn't just to fight people, right? It's to help out any way they can. And Izuku knew that this could be a really awesome spot for families to visit. He had started that training about a year ago and was very happy with his results. The entire beach was devoid of trash, and it hadn't done too badly in helping his already amazing physique. But that wasn't the best thing that happened on the beach, no. The best thing was very unexpected to him. The best thing was meeting May Hatsum. May had come barreling down the staircase while he was cleaning, nearly red with anger. "You?" Izuku was startled by her sudden appearance, as he could usually feel the quirk of someone from a few hundred meters away at this point, but her quirk didn't really stand out. Must be a minor mutation or very weak, he thought inwardly, before looking up at her. "Hey, what's up? Is there a problem?" She stopped a few feet in front of him. "You're the one who has been stealing all my scrap metal." Izuku looked around. At this point, he had cleaned about 1/3 of the beach, so he wondered, why didn't she just use the stuff that was left? "I'm cleaning up the beach as training for UA." Her eyes lit up as she did a once-over of him. "You're going to UA? Do you happen to need an inventor?" Izuku eeped at how close she had gotten, but composed himself and replied, "Well, actually, I do have some gear I need to make, but why would you help me? Are you going to be a support student?" She started to nod frantically. "Yes, and I was using scrap metal from the beach to build my gear, but if you're training, maybe we can make this work." If you need to train using the scrap, Izuku was starting to get worried. She had started to write stuff in the sand, the gleam in her eye mischievous and giddy. Uh, how about before we go making plans, we introduce ourselves? I'll go first. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and you? He was half expecting her not to hear him. He knew how he could get during his muttering episodes. OH, right, my name is myheroacademia. A pleasure to meet you. And, to answer your first question, I want to help you get in so you can be a model for all my babies. Babies? May, do you call your gadgets babies? The smile she was giving him increased somehow. Yes, they're all my babies, and I am their mother. While he was a little freaked out with her mannerisms, he could respect her enthusiasm and drive. All right then, May, where is your workshop? I can carry anything I think could help you straight to it. She squealed. Really? You would do that? Oh my God, thank you. It's normal so hard to convince my papa to let me use the truck to collect stuff. But if you want to help, that's amazing. She threw herself at him, squashing him in a hug. His face immediately sprung into a deep red blush, and he pried her off after a few seconds of rebooting. And so their partnership as inventors and beach cleaners had formed. Over the course of the cleanup, they had become close friends, and she had helped him design his 3 items for the test. The 3 items he had been practicing with, so he could take out robotic villains. He mentally thanked Mirio for the heads up. He probably would have failed if he went into it thinking it would be against other people. He smiled as he walked, reminiscing on the last few years, but as he walked through an underpass, he was too distracted to notice the manhole cover twitching beneath him. God damn, he's fast. Why is he so fast? He's just a living pile of goop. All Might was sprinting through the sewers, chasing the sludge villain through the maze that was under the city. The sludge villain was avoiding him, apparently familiar with the system, which made sense to All Might. He turned a corner and saw the sludge pushing on a manhole cover and sprinted forward, hand sinking into the goop as he tried to grab it. The sludge villain pushed him back, and as All Might hit the ground, he broke through the floor into a collection point. He was struggling in the goop of the collection point while the sludge villain went up, talking to someone, and then he heard screaming. All Might prepared himself to deal with a hostage situation and jumped up onto the ground level, arms pulled back for a punch. He was not ready for what came next. Izuku was pushed up and forward by the manhole cover beneath his foot flying upward, and he pulled himself into a roll, turning and facing the threat. I'll look at you, a well-built invisibility cloak. Come here, kid. The pile of goop threw itself at Izuku, who dodged to the side and activated his quirk, turning the villain's quirk off. What the fuck, kid? What are you doing to me? The villain was yelling as his body morphed and twisted, becoming solid, a regular human body. Using his confusion, Izuku punched him in the now solid face, knocking him to the ground. He spun him around, face down, and pinned his arms behind his back, ignoring the screams of pain and confusion he was letting out. He heard a rush of air behind him and turned his head. Do not worry, dear citizen, Izuku's breath hitched. Surely not, he works in Tokyo. For I am here. Izuku's fanboy radar was on fire, and he was fighting back the temptation of seeing what All Might's quirk looked like, focusing on holding his attacker down. All Might, is that really you? Izuku had never met the man in real life before, and this was a massive opportunity. Young man, what are you doing with that man? And in God's name, why is he naked? Izuku looked down, only just realizing that his attacker actually was naked. It's not what it looks like, All Might, sir. He attacked me, so I turned off his quirk. He changed from like, this big pile of goop, into this, and held him down. I was about to call the cops. I promise, All Might. All Might was definitely not prepared to see a teenager holding a naked middle-aged man down, arms pinned behind his back, screaming bloody murder. He was even more unprepared to learn that the naked man was the villain he was chasing and that a teenager had a quirk capable of this. Young man, I know you must be frightened, but if what you say is true, I need you to turn your quirk off. I highly doubt you're a licensed pro at your age. The boy looked at him. All Might, sir. He called me an invisibility cloak. I think he was trying to get inside me to control my body. All Might shuddered slightly. He was having a very odd day, and at this point, and it didn't even really faze him when the boy brought his fist back and knocked the man unconscious, getting up before the man started to melt, morphing back into its liquid form. The boy brought out a large bottle from his bag and started to funnel the sludge into the bottle before handing it to All Might. "There you go, sir. He should be out for a while, hopefully enough to reach the police station." All Might was still in a bit of shock, but snapped out of it when he started to feel the pull on his power. His time was almost up. "Thank you, young man. I'll take him right away. Say, what's your name?" Izuku was barely containing his excitement. All Might wanted to know his name. "Izuku Midoriya, All Might, sir." All Might kept smiling as he prepared to jump. "Well, Midoriya, I have a feeling that you have a very prominent hero career in your future." He noticed how the boy looked at him like a god on earth when he said that. "With abilities and skills like that, I'm sure you'll be one of the greats." In fact, he quickly wrote something down on a bit of paper before handing it to Izuku. "This is a friend of mine. He has similar abilities to you. Just tell him I sent you. He should be able to help with you training. I am assuming your goal is UA?" Izuku nodded. "Yes, All Might, sir. You and Eraserhead went there, so it's gotta be the best." Izuku felt like he was about to faint. Surely All Might didn't just give him his number. Surely All Might hadn't just given him a ticket to his all-time favorite hero. He was about to ask him, but before he could, All Might jumped, leaving Izuku holding the phone number of his greatest idol. He started walking towards home, vibrating with excitement, before he realized something and mentally slapped himself. "I should have checked what All Might's quirk looked like. With that much power, I'm sure it would be beautiful." All Might was having a weird day. He had started his day with a concrete plan. Go get his groceries, go home, and have a rest day. He got one out of the three, which was all right in his mind. He was the symbol of peace. After all, it's more important for him to keep the people safe than it was to have a day off. What he got instead of a day off was one of the weirdest meetings of his life. A teenager that was able to almost instantly take out a villain that he was chasing. Then, for some reason, he had given the kid he met 5 minutes beforehand the phone number of a hero who had a penchant for expelling students. What was I thinking? Aizawa's gonna eat him alive. He landed near the police station and went to reach for the bottle holding the sludge villain. His hand brushed empty air. The bottle had slipped for his pants as he flew. Oh crap, gotta find him before he gets out of the bot. Chapter 4. A Fight and a Phone Call. All Might paled. He knew who was causing this, and he knew that he didn't have any time left in his hero form. All Might had made many mistakes before. There was the second attack he participated in as a sidekick, where he knocked down a building with a stray punch, causing nearly $200,000 in property damage. There was that fight, the one that gave him his injury. The injury that had led to his rapid decline in the time that he was able to be All Might. The injury that now stabbed into his side as he sprinted towards the street, explosions sounding every few seconds. He reached the large group of people that had gathered at the end of the street. He paled at the sight of the street. It was a hellscape. Fire burning everywhere. Explosions going off from the large blob of goo in the center, surrounding a young boy, holding him hostage. He cursed the injury to his side. He cursed his godforsaken time limit. He cursed it for stopping him from saving the young man being held hostage by the villain that he dropped. The symbol of peace. Unable to stop someone taking a life because he dropped a bottle. I'm pathetic. How can I call myself a hero? Toshinori Yagi gripped the pole he was leaning against. How can I call myself the #1 hero? He started to mentally kick himself. If he had just been better, if he had just be. Kachan. Toshinori cursed. He knew that voice. He knew what was about to happen. He looked over to the left of the crows and shouted when he saw the boy from earlier push past Kemui Woods, sprinting towards the monster. He watched as a fight broke out between the pro heroes if they should go and get him, but they seemed shaken by the villain morphing into a naked man to decide quick enough. Pathetic, can T help one boy? Relying on children to do what I should have the second I got here. He pushed the pain to the back of his mind, buffing up out of sight of the crowd. Do not worry, young Midoriya, for I am here. Izuku had just met All Might, and he had given him Eraserhead's phone number. He wasn't freaking out, totally not freaking out. Him basically vibrating with excitement didn't mean he was freaking out. Totally didn't mean anything. He was jogging back towards his house when he heard the explosions. Another villain attack. I wonder if All Might will show up again. Ever the hero fan, he sprinted towards the explosions. He could feel the heroes before he saw them. He could see the quirks of Kamui Woods. He had seen his a few times before, a literal forest filled control and growth. And he could see Death Arms, the concrete wall ready to harden as his fists collide. MT Lady was, to Izuku, gave off the concept of one of those grow and shrink rays they had on TV sci-fi shows. I wonder if May and I could build one. Backdraft was like a boat in the sea, in control of its direction. He was pulled out of his thoughts as he got closer, and his heart felt like it could stop. He knew the two quirks in the middle of the street. One he had been acquainted with since he was able to see them, and one he had seen again only minutes before. He pushed his way to the front of the crowd, praying it wasn't him, praying that his quirk sight had messed up, but he knew. He reached the front of the crowd and saw him. The sludge villain from earlier, holding his friend. Were they friends? Kachan had left him alone after he got his quirk. He wasn't sure anymore. Hostage. Kachan. He was moving before he could think, sliding past the confused pros whose quirks had just been shut off. You? God damn it, kid, why did it have to be you? The sludge villain had started to solidify again, but this time he was prepared. He threw Kachan to the side, flying over some debris and smacking into his head onto some rubble, knocking him unconscious. The villain straightened himself, already getting into a classical martial arts stance. I just have to kill you instead, kid. This is the scene that the news would be playing for the next week, minimum. The previously sludge villain threw a punch at Izuku, and he realized that he had no actual training. He dodged out of the way of the punch, attempting to throw one of his own, before stepping in a bit of the fire, hesitating at it burned his calf. The villain took this opportunity, punching him in the face, knocking Izuku off his feet. As he hit the ground, he did a backwards roll, standing up straight. Villain, stand down. You're quirkless while I am here. You can escape. He didn't yell it, as he knew he had cameras on him, and he probably shouldn't ruin his chances at being an underground hero like Eraserhead before he even got into UA, right? A very sleep-deprived man sneezed on his way to his couch, and flicking the TV on, was very intrigued by what he saw. You fucking brat. I'll kill you, quirkless or not. The man ran at him again, and Izuku prepared himself. The man had surprisingly good control of what was essentially a new body. Izuku wondered if he had been born goop, or had he melted at the age of 4. As a fist slammed into his gut, he realized that there were more important things right now. He grabbed his wrist as the villain tried to pull it back, twisting it, hearing something snap. The man yelled and ran a few feet back. You shitty fucking kid. I'll tear you limb from limb. He ran at Izuku, who sidestepped him, elbowing him in the back, but before he could take him to the ground, the villain rolled to the side, avoiding a punch to his forehead. Slamming his fist into the ground where his face had been, Izuku heard one of his fingers snap. Shit, I broke my finger. I need to finish this quickly. He dodged out of the way of another punch, sweeping the villain legs from under him, but yelped as he was pulled down with him. On the ground, the villain pounced, landing on top of him and punching his gut, winding Izuku. Izuku tried to pry the man off, but he punched him in the face again, and Izuku was starting to get dizzy. He was starting to lose focus, and he knew his quirk was about to slip. Izuku, on the outside, was calm, but on the inside, well, on the inside Izuku was furious. He knew that it was a bit jarring to see people morph like that, but for Christ's sake, why has an hero come in to help me ye dash? Almost as soon as he had the thought, his quirk sense picked up on one of the most amazing sights in his life. He pushed the villain off him as he was distracted by the new arrival, and stepped back from him as All Might slammed into the ground in front of him. Why if it isn't young Midoriya? My apologies, my boy. I was a bit tied up. Thank you for helping out. But you can go now because I am here. Izuku had stopped listening. He was enamored at the sight of All Might's quirk. Raw, uncontrolled power, 8 swirling storms of pure energy flowing through All Might's body. Izuku had never seen anything like it before. He had never heard anything like it before. Wait, heard his quirk. OH, shit guys, did you hear the kid? Yeah man, did he just say he could hear us? Holy crap dude. Not even All Might can hear us. We've been trying for years. Okay, kid, I know you want to be a hero. What else would you want to be? Jumping in all stupid like that. And we will explain later, but for now, please just go back to the crowd, okay? Izuku definitely had this day checked under weirdest ever. All he wanted to do was get back to his house. And he had been attacked, met All Might, tried to save Kachan, saw All Might's Quirk, which was talking to him. What the actual foo dash? He was knocked out of his panic by a stream of water grabbing his shoulder, pulling him back towards the crowd. He could feel Backdraft's Quirk activating due to his loss of focus, and let it happen, allowing himself to be pulled back. "Kid, what the hell do you think you're doing?" was the first thing said to Izuku. All Might had finished dealing with the villain, who was again knocked out cold. He looked over to where Backdraft had grabbed young Midoriya. He had no doubt in his mind, he liked the kid. He was passionate. He had an excellent quirk, and apparently quite handy with martial arts. Maybe Aizawa won't kill him. He pointed to young Midoriya and gave a thumbs up. He saw the boy nod, and the villain lying in front of him melted. "Do not worry, dear citizens. The delinquent has been captured." As the crowd around the area started to cheer, Toshinori already mentally prepared himself to hold his form for an interview. As he walked back to the crowd, hands held high, he saw Kamui Woods attempting to scold young Midoriya, but Midoriya had eyes for no one but All Might. He was muttering and flipping back from staring at the ground to staring at All Might, and it was starting to freak him out. "Officers, please get a large and secure container for our villain friend over here." The police officers in the area started scrambling around, getting the container that All Might asked for, and All Might went through the motions in his various interviews. About halfway through the fourth interview, he noticed young Midoriya skulking off, trying his best to be unseen. He failed, though, and was jumped by a team of reporters who asked him questions about why he jumped in there, what his quirk was, etc. All Might knew how bad interviews could be, and so decided to save the boy. "I am sorry, dear media person, but the young man needs to get home. I'm sure his parents will be worried about him." And so he grabbed Izuku and jumped. He jumped towards the beach, attempting to shake the reporters. Izuku was still a little dazed after his fight, and being 300 m in the air really wasn't helping right now. He wasn't even sure he was in the air. "I probably have a concussion," he thought before he was interrupted. He looked at All Might, who was starting to release steam. The weird voices were going crazy about this. "Guys, he can't land, he can't land. Oh geez, it's game over, man, it's game over." No, god damn it, Toshi. You always push yourself way too far. "Hey kid, you seem pretty handy, got any way to help?" All Might's about to drop, and he can land safely, as he is out of power. All Might out of power? Izuku couldn't believe what he was hearing, and not just because the quirk was talking to him. "All Might, you okay?" All Might looked at him with a pained smile. "All good, young Arf." Izuku nearly fainted then and there. All Might, his number 2 hero, had just deflated. He looked at All Might and remembered what the voices had said. "All Might, can you land?" The man with sunken eyes looked at him, fear gripping his face. "No, I can't." "Holy shit, young man, brace for impact," he yelled, wrapping his arms around Izuku and pointing himself at the ground. Izuku was tired. He didn't know if he could stay awake much longer, and he knew he was going to be out of it after this. "All Might, get ready to land feet first. I know you can." As the boy activated his quirk, All Might gave a surprised yell. He felt power. He always felt power, of course, albeit less nowadays. But this was more. He hadn't felt this good since his injury. He felt like he was back in his heyday. He buffed up, easier than it had been for the last 5 years, and looked at the boy. His was startled. Izuku's eyes had gone fully golden, including the scara, and it was glowing. He was releasing golden light, like a flashlight from his eyes. All Might hit the ground with ease, softening the landing so Izuku didn't get whiplash. "Young man, what in God's name W dash?" He stopped halfway through his question as Izuku face-planted, unconscious. As he hit the ground, the power Toshinori had felt dissipated, and he forcefully deflated. He stared at the boy in front of him, lying on the ground, before grabbing his phone and quickly calling an ambulance, sitting down next to the boy. He thought about the boost of power he had just gotten, what Izuku had done, and what it had done to him. Self-sacrificing, powerful, good moral code. He's definitely a front-runner for it. But I need to get to know him better before I even think about passing it on to him. He got up and greeted the paramedic who arrived and answered questions about who he was, who Izuku was, what happened, etc. The boy was put into the ambulance and taken to the hospital. His mother was called and Tashinori was psyching himself up for her to find them. He didn't want to be in the way of a mother's warpath. "Where is my son?" Tashinori jumped as a voice silenced all the conversations around the room. The doctors must have guessed who she was as they approached her. "You must be Ms. Midoriya. Please, this is a hospital, so I need you to not yell, okay?" Inko nodded. "All right, Izuku is in room 3C, but he is unconscious, has been since he got in the ambulance. He has a broken ring finger on his right hand, a fractured rib, and a concussion. All of these are minor injuries, so we can figure out why he hasn't woken up." He pulled out a small clipboard and a pen. "Do you know if it has anything to do with his quirk?" Inko nodded. She had an idea of why. Part of his quirk can boost the quirks of others, like his father, but it takes a lot out of him. If he boosted someone when he was already tired, it might put his body into rest mode. She looked over to Tashinori, who was approaching. "Who are you?" She felt like she had seen the man before. He was tall, and that hair and his blue eyes felt familiar. Could it be? No, it couldn't. This man was a twig, not a living diagram of an Olympian athlete. The man introduced himself. "Good evening, Ms. Midoriya. My name is Tashinori Yagi. I am the one who found your son, unconscious near the beach. I called the ambulance as soon as I found him." She gave him a look of thanks before grabbing the visitors past the doctor was holding and sprinting towards 3C. She burst into the room to see Izuku hooked up to a few machines, but she was just glad to see him safe. She sat down next to him, grabbing his hand, and stayed there for a while, crying softly. Tashinori had arrived a little after Inko, wanting to see how Izuku was doing, but couldn't bring himself to interrupt the moment. "I know you're there, Mr. Yagi. You may come in." She hadn't looked up since he got there. Maybe she could hear him? "Ah, Ms. Midoriya, I'm sorry for intruding. I didn't want to interrupt you with your son." He gave her a small smile. She gave him one back. "That's quite all right, Mr. Yagi dash," he cut her off. "Tashinori. Please, call me Tashinori." Inko smiled a bit wider. "All right then, Tashinori. I must thank you for finding my son. I saw him on the news and I was so worried. The after All Might grabbed him, I thought he would be fine. But when I find that hero that left Izuku alone, I'm gonna wring his neck." Tashinori gulped. He couldn't explain what All Might did without revealing his biggest secret to a woman he just met. So he didn't. He couldn't give her an explanation. Not yet. "Yes, I myself was quite upset when I discovered All Might left an exhausted child alone. And as an old friend of his, I will be sure to knock some sense into him the next time we meet." He hadn't expected his sentence to surprise Inko, but when she sputtered, he realized that most people have never even met All Might, let alone be close friends. "Would you mind if I tagged along? I would like to give him a piece of my mind personally." Tashinori gulped again. The murderous tone in Inko's voice was so dissimilar to her usual soft tones. "I do not know Ms. Midoriya. I'll see if I can set up a meeting." Tashinori had faced villains before. Hell, he had faced a quirk-stealing centenarian hell-bent on killing all of the OFA users, but never had he been so scared. Inko stared at him with murder in her eyes. "Thank you, Tashiner." She stopped suddenly as Izuku sat upright quickly, rambling. "All Might, are we safe? Did we land?" Tashinori cursed inwardly. This kid was gonna blow his whole story. "Izuku Midoriya, stop yelling right now." Izuku stopped halfway through his ramble to look at his mom. "Mom, I helped stop a villain. I got rescued by All Might by reporters. Then we—" Inko didn't like how he stared at Tashinori as his sentence drifted off. Tashinori was sweating slightly. He had hoped the kid would have forgotten his deflated form. "All Might. Wait, All-Me dash." Tashinori knew his mother was already angry at him, but he needed to keep his secret safe. Slapping his hand over Izuku's mouth seemed his only option at doing so. "Mr. Yagi? What is my son talking about? You are certainly not All Might." Oh, how he wanted to laugh. She had no idea how wrong she was. And so he told them about what had happened after his jump away from the reporters. He told them about his injury, about his now weakened form that he could only hold for about 3.5 hours a day. And then he talked about why he came with Izuku to the hospital. "Young Midoriya, I must ask, what did do while we were in the air? I was able to go into my muscle form again, and I haven't felt power like what I had up there since before my injury." Izuku was still a little out of it, and so he spoke very slowly. Well, Mr. All Might, sir, it's part of my quirk. I can manipulate the quirks of anyone within a sphere with a 100 m radius around me. I got the manipulation part from my dad, the support hero, booster, and the ranged aspect from my mom, who has telekinesis. Using it, I can turn off quirks like Eraserhead, although mine can stop mutation types for some reason, and I can also increase the strength of the quirks in my field, although it tires me out really fast. He grabbed his notebook out of his bag and flipped through the pages. Although I was already tired, boosting your quirk put a much heavier strain on me than I calculated. I don't know why. I estimated I could do it for about 15 seconds with the energy I had left, but I was out of it after 6 seconds. Fascinating young Midoriya. I feel I made the right choice giving you Eraserhead's number. With his help, you will grow to be an even better hero than you already are. Toshinori rose to his feet and flashed the Midoriya's a smile. I must take my leave now. I thank you for allowing me to stay this long. He stopped just outside the doorway and looked back inside. Oh, and young Midoriya, keep up the good work. I have a feeling we will be seeing a lot more of each other these next few months. When Izuku got home that night, he checked his messages on his computer as his phone had been broken in the fight. There was one from Kachan, a short paragraph detailing how Izuku shouldn't let this go to his head. He was still going to be the #1 hero, etc. There was a short one from Kendo, asking if he was okay. Apparently, Momo had called her 10 times seeing if Kendo knew. Speaking of which, there were about 70 from Momo, ranging from berating him for doing such a stupid thing, to praising him for his heroic acts, to begging for him to be okay. He smiled to himself as he marked Kachan's as read and sent a message to the group chat between him, Momo, and Kendo. Mini Razorhead. Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that I'm okay. Saw your messages. 5 Finger Super Punch. God damn you, you incorrigible idiot. I'm so glad you're okay. 3D, Printer, Izuku. Oh god, I'm so glad to hear that. I saw what you did on the news. What happened? Mini Razorhead. Well, I saw that Kachan needed my help, and my body just moved. I didn't ask it to. I just jumped into action. He's fine, by the way. 5 Finger Super Punch. How is the dude so ready for you? I know you're damn good at martial arts. I'm surprised you didn't end it at the start. Mini Razorhead. Well, he had attacked me just a few minutes beforehand, so he was expecting his quirk to be turned off. And I burnt my calf on some of that fire, flinched, and then he punched me. 5 Finger Super Punch. Well, when it gets back to school, I'm going to beat your head in, you idiot. You gave us quite a scare, and I'm sure Annie Inko was worried sick. 3D. Printer. I gotta say, I had to create tissues for my entire family throughout the entire thing. You're gonna have to make this up to us, Izuku. And so they talked until Inko called Izuku down for dinner. She had made katsudon and was simultaneously scolding and praising him for the day's events. He thought that he was going to be in big trouble for this, and so was surprised when his mum didn't punish him. He spent the next few days as the Sludge Villain Stopper, a title that he both didn't want and was false. All Might had stopped the bad guy. He just held him off. He was able to avoid the reporters that hounded his house and followed him to school, but he was not able to avoid Kendo's wrath. It was Monday morning, and he had just arrived at the school he and Kendo went to. Momo was rich AF, as Kendo put it, and went to a fancy private school, much to the three's dismay. Izuku was walking through the front door as he felt a familiar quirk activate, and quickly turned it off. Kendo's now small fist smacked lightly onto his head. Izuku, I swear to God you gave me a bloody heart attack. He grinned at her. He knew she was teasing him. He had been on the receiving end of it for years. Oh, woe is me, my dear friend. However, shall I fix this damning transgression? He accentuated his overly dramatic speech with a hand over his eyes in a flashy pose. Move out of my way, or I'll kill you, you damn nerd. He had felt Kachan approaching, but hadn't turned his quirk off, knowing that it would only make the boy angrier. He stepped out of his way, allowing Kachan to pass. Kendo gave him a death stare, wondering how the cinnamon roll that was Izuku Midoriya could stand the boy. As Kachan passed, he stopped in front of Izuku and whispered something Izuku that he couldn't believe. Thank you, you fucking shitty nerd. Now don't make this a big deal, or I'll kill you. Quirk or no quirk. If I don't see your name on the application form to the hero course at UA, I'm gonna wring your neck. Izuku just smiled as he walked past, nodding instead of responding. Kachan just grunted and headed off to homeroom. The rest of the day went fairly normally, Kendo angry at him, which consisted of silent glares that broke down the second he looked at her or talking his ear off constantly. His classmates were the same. Some of them were jealous that he got to meet All Might. Some were angry that it was goddamn Deku that got to be on the news for taking down a villain. The next few weeks were filled with normal school and training stuff, as well as paying for lunches to make up for what he did, which he had no regrets for doing. After about 2 weeks, he stopped getting recognized from the attack, and the media seemed to have given up. His house was no longer a war zone to leave, and no one followed him to school. He was glad to be left alone, as that meant they also left his mom alone, and she really didn't need to be dealing with reporters 24/7. It was almost 2 months later when he grabbed Hero Notebook number 11, and a small card dropped out of the book onto his desk. His eyes widened as he saw the writing. How could he have forgotten about that? He quickly grabbed his new phone and dialed the number, praying that it still worked. He was giddy with excitement. He was about to talk to the Eraserhead, his number one hero, the coolest hero in the war. "Who are you and what do you want?" The voice on the other end of the phone sounded exhausted and grumpy, very grumpy. Good afternoon, sir. My name in Midoriya is Izuku, and I was given your number by All Might, sir." There was a grunt. "That's 1 out of 2, kid. What do you want?" Izuku calmed himself. If he didn't impress Eraserhead here, he might not get the chance ever again. "Eraserhead, sir, I am calling to ask you to help train me. I can pay you if you want, and All Might said that you would be able to help me get even better with my quirk." He heard a small, goddamn blonde idiot before Eraserhead cleared his throat. "Kid, if you're the one All Might told me about, meet me near the beach tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. If you're late, I go home, deal?" Izuku nearly fainted there and then, but responded in his calmest possible voice. "Yes, sir, Eraserhead, sir. I'll be there." Eraserhead grunted. "Good," and then he hung up. Izuku quickly sent a message to the group chat detailing the phone call. They were both super excited for him. He woke up the next morning to his alarm going off at 4:45 and started to get ready. He got into his workout clothes and left the house, heading towards the beach. Chapter 5. Training and Results. Aizawa hated mornings. He knew that most people didn't have his terrible sleep schedules like him, but he still couldn't understand how people could be so chipper so early, like this godforsaken kid in front of him, basically bouncing with excitement. "So, you're Midoriya, Izuku." He kept a straight face, thinking of where he had seen the kid before. He was definitely familiar. The kid had his interest, but there was no way he was going to let him know that. "Yes, sir, Mr. Eraserhead. All Might gave me your number after I was attacked 2 months ago, but I only found the card last night. I'm so glad you're letting me train with you, sir. You're my favorite hero. Even if you don't have much merchandise, I have any that there is." Aizawa was stunned for a moment. He inwardly groaned. "Dear God, All Might sent me a freaking fanboy. I have a fanboy. Why in God's name do I have a fanboy? I try my best to avoid the media, and this is what I get for it." He looked back up at the golden-haired boy, trying to place where he knew him. The boy looked up at him, still mumbling, and Aizawa's breath hitched as he looked into the kid's eyes. "Holy shit. Kid, a few things. 1. Stop that. I need you focused, not just mumbling throughout the training." The boy beamed at this. "And 2. You wouldn't happen to be related to the support hero Booster, would you? You're practically a dead ringer." It was Izuku's turn to be stunned. Most of the people that he knew didn't know who his dad was, except Itsuka and Momo, but Eraserhead did? "Yes, sir, he was my dad." And again, was Aizawa's turn be the stunned one again as he looked up at the sky. "Holy shit, okay, that's it. Hisashi, I will fulfill my promise. I will train your son." He snapped himself out of his stupor and addressed the boy. "All right, kid, I'll train you. With a body like that, I'm going to assume you've been training on your own, so strength shouldn't be an issue for now. We will be focusing on skill and finesse." Izuku was nodding, focused entirely on his hero. He would prove to Eraserhead that he could be a hero too. So they started training. 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. every day, they were at the beach, sparring, as Eraserhead taught him various fighting styles. Every now and then another hero would show up, much to Izuku's delight, as he filled his notebooks with even more detailed analyses because Eraserhead said it was detrimental to only fight one person, as you can fall into habits that don't work against others. Eraserhead was one of the toughest people Izuku had ever met. He was fast, too fast, and Izuku briefly pondered the possibility of him having a speed quirk as well as erasure, but quickly dismissed it. No one can have multiple quirks. After Izuku questioned him about his speed, Aizawa told him his secret. Most people still think that without a quirk, we have the same types of bodies we did back before quirks started appearing. This is false. The humans with quirks were the next step in our evolution. We are no longer Homo sapiens. We are now more than that. Most people don't realize this and only train themselves to be on par with athletes of the past. Well, I want you to go further, plus ultra, if you will. My speed and strength are my own. This new step in humanity's evolution has more potential than that of our predecessors. Our muscles can be stronger, slimmer, faster. Our brains can work faster and smarter. Our bodies are more efficient, and we can benefit from this. People just don't realize this and stagnate at an outdated average. I have acquired this speed and strength through rigorous training that you will have to suffer through. By the time of UA's practical exam, I want you to be able to run 50 meters in 3 seconds. Izuku had nearly thrown up there, and then 50 meters in 3 seconds. The most recent non-speed quirk user's record is 5.5. How am I supposed to do that? But he knew that if he wanted to be on par with his hero, he would have to go beyond what he thought was possible, plus ultra. And so the hellish training began. Izuku was fit, the picture of health, but Aizawa was made for this. He outran Izuku. He hit harder than Izuku. He reacted quicker than Izuku and moved faster than he did. But as the training went on, the gap between them shrank. Izuku could see Aizawa's movements now and was even able to get a few hits in, but he needed to be better. He kept up with his normal martial arts, of course, but as he got better because of his training with Aizawa, he quickly started to outperform the other students, to the point where Etsuya had to spar with him personally. Even as a professional, Etsuya had some difficulty with this new Izuku. And this was the schedule for the next 10 months, in preparation for UA's Hero Course exam. Izuku had his support items, given the seal of approval from Mei, and he had his training and his brain, and he was going to crush these tests. The day of the exam has arrived. Izuku has arrived at UA with Itsuka, determined to kick ass during these trials. She was aware that he had gotten faster, but he wanted to show her, and the teachers, just what he was capable of. And that's when he tripped. Welp, this is a fantastic start, he thought to himself, throwing himself into a roll before he noticed that he never actually hit the ground. His momentum hadn't changed though, and Itsuka burst out laughing as she saw him floating in midair, spinning like the main character in that old game about the blue. Was it a ferret? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that you were going to do that. I shouldn't have used my quirk on you, my bad. A girl with short brown hair and pink cheeks said to Izuku, but he was already in quirk analysis mode. Still spinning, he started on one of his questioning monologues. Wow, your quirk is amazing. Does it make things unaffected by gravity, or does it take away all mass from the object? Can you make things heavier? Are the pads on your fingers part of it? Maybe you have to touch some arg. He was pulled out of his muttering by Itsuka, who had smacked him on the head and stopped his spinning. The girl was looking at Izuku with an expression that was a mix of amused, concerned, and confused. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I just like analyzing quirks, and yours looks amazing. But do you think you could put me down now? He asked as nicely as he could, and she yelped. Oh my god, sorry. She placed her hands together, and Izuku felt his weight returning as he landed on the ground. My name is Uraraka Achako. Nice to meet you. Izuku smiled. He could almost hear the smiley face in her sentence. Nice to meet you as well. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and this is Itsuka Kendo. Kendo waved with a normal-sized hand. Well, we gotta get to the exam now. Good luck, Uraraka. Izuku flashed her a smile before sprinting towards the door. The two girls barely had time to notice he had started running before he reached the bottom of the steps and turned back, waving them to follow. Wow, that's a cool speed quirk. I have no doubts that he's going to get in, Uraraka said to Itsuka, who laughed. He doesn't have a speed quirk. His quirk is that he can manipulate other people's quirks. That's just his normal speed. Uraraka looked at Itsuka like she had grown a second head. What? How is that even possible? Itsuka just shrugged. She had gotten used to it, but Izuku had never revealed how he did it. Zuku just said that his new trainer had these groundbreaking training techniques. Uraraka giggled at the nickname before opening the door for Itsuka. Well, I guess we should probably get to the exam, she said, before running off to her seat. Itsuka shook her head. She is very excitable. Izuku had been hissed at by Kachan to not distract him as he sat through present mix intro, been yelled at by a boy with blue hair for muttering, and had arrived out front of testing area B and was putting on his support items. The goggles, boots, and sword on his back didn't look like much, but he had spent almost 2.5 years developing these items with Mei, and damn was he proud of them. When Izuku had put in the application form for them to be allowed into the exam, the principal, Nizu, holy crap I got to meet Nizu, had expressed surprise that someone his age could make things like this. The goggles were for protection, as well as working in tandem with the boots. They had multiple modes: thermal vision, zoom comparable to Mei's, and night vision, and he planned on adding more. He was damn proud of his sword. He had gotten inspiration after watching a medical show with his mom, where the surgeon was using a plasma scalpel. It had hit him while eating his dinner. What if I used the same idea on a sword? He asked the question he had given Mei on his next visit to the beach, and she had squealed, eager to start the project. This baby is going to be amazing. She had yelled and helped him design and build it. And he was damn proud of the sword, capable of up to 3 minutes with a laser edge, and acting like a normal sword outside of the 3 minutes. But his boots, they were his masterpiece. They had shock absorption, so he could land safely from his jumps, as well as jump extenders, powered by the friction caused by running, supplemented slightly with solar power, and could increase his jump by a lot. Although he hadn't tested them a lot, he had only finished them a few days ago, and Aizawa's training took up a lot of his time. The goggles had icons for the boots, giving him an idea of how much of their power they had available for jumps. He had finished putting his gear on and breathed deeply, calming himself. He needed to be ready for this. Mirio said that it was robots, and he was right. Although he did warn me to look out for the bullshit they would throw at me, so I have to keep my guard red. Let's go, examinees, start. Izuku bolted at this. His sparring matches with Aizawa had been similarly sudden. So this is the bullshit they were going to pull. He could deal with this. The other examinees were shocked at the lack of a countdown, as well as his speed, and stood in shock for a second. All right, examinee, 2, 2, 3, 2. What are the rest of you guys waiting for? There are no countdowns in real life. The crowd behind him sprang to life, but he didn't worry. By the time they had gotten to the bots, about 20 seconds after he did, he had used his sword to cut down 2 3-pointers, 2 2-pointers, and 4 1-pointers. 14 points, he thought. With my sword, this is going to be a piece of cake. He worked his way through the exam, minutes ticking away until there were about 2 minutes left. The people around him were starting to get antsy, and he heard a few people calling out their scores. 42, yelled the gravity girl as she dropped a few 2-pointers. 58, yelled the blue-haired speedster as he kicked through a 1-pointer. Izuku wasn't worried. He had been counting, and he was nearing the 55 marks for his points, so he hung back from attacking and switched to making sure people were safe. He grabbed an examinee and pushed him out of the way of a falling bot, and the guy looked thankful before Izuku ran off. He continued to do this for the exam before IT arrived. Izuku first noticed the ground rumbling, and then people yelling, and saw a crowd running back towards the gate, away from, holy shit. He had turned the corner to see what was happening and was greeted by a robot, bigger by far than any of the others. A robot that was rolling through the arena, crushing buildings. Not even worth trying to take out, he thought, and turned to run as well. That's when he heard it. AHH, a small cry coming from the same direction as the 0-pointer. He stopped and looked back, seeing the girl, Uraraka, from the front gate. He turned and ran straight for the 0-pointer. Aizawa was sitting in the judge's room, watching over the examinees with the rest of the teachers. He was currently sitting next to All Might, who was in his emaciated form and was a bit uncomfortable. He knew about All Might's injuries, but he didn't realize that it was this bad. He was currently watching a boy who could make his skin hard as rock punch through robots on his way out, running from their arena's 0-pointer. He heard coughing beside him and looked over. Holy shit, kid. Aizawa was surprised. He had never heard All Might swear before and followed his eyes to see where he was looking. Holy shit, kid. He couldn't stop himself, and the other judges gave him looks for it. He knew Izuku was headstrong, but was he serious? He was running towards the 0-pointer, dodging people running the opposite direction. Aizawa could see the way he was running, winding up for a jump. Nizu, bring up Examinee 2232 on the big screen. He heard All Might yell, and then a small, that's gotta be him. Nizu pulled the feed for Izuku up to the big screen. Aizawa could hear the other judges' gasps in disbelief as they watched what he did. Midnight stood up with and cracked her whip at his actions, then started cheering as he reached the ground. Holy shit. If that kid doesn't get in, then I quit. Aizawa gave an amused glare at Nizu's smug grin, and he winked at him. A message popped up of Aizawa's screen. Your student really is something. Aizawa paled for a second. He hadn't told anyone he was teaching Izuku. Does that damn rat have me bugged? There are no bugs on you. Promise, winky face. Izuku was running towards Uraraka, who was trapped under some rubble, and, apparently, towards the 0-pointer, as if his friends didn't already think he was batshit crazy. He dodged in between the other examinees, who gave him funny looks as he ran towards the giant freaking robot. He started to run faster, winding up his legs for a jump. According to his goggles, his sword had 12 seconds left with the laser edge, but his shoes were at 100%. He hadn't needed to jump much during the exam, so he just used them for shock absorption. Uraraka, from under the rubble, looked up and saw the boy from the front gate, Izuku, I think, running towards her and tried to yell at him to turn around but couldn't form the words. He heard him yell something, pressing a button on the side of his goggles, and then he was gone. Izuku twisted the dial on the side of his goggles, turning the boots to 100% jump power, and jumped. He soared into the air, higher than he thought possible, and he heard cracks and sparks. Oh shit, my left boot is dead, right on 0%. Need to upgrade them next time I see May. He flew up towards the face of the 0-pointer, aiming for the glass eye in the middle of it. He kicked the eye, crashing through it, landing in a server area. He activated his sword and started slashing any wires and server boxes he could see, using the last second of its laser edge to slash through a large bunch of cables at the back, connecting the head to the rest of the robot. He heard the robot powering down and felt it starting to tip over. He was worried that it would go forward, but luckily, it was falling back the way it came. He ran to the eye and jumped out, getting ready to land on his right foot and roll to take away some of the force from the impact. He was plummeting towards the ground, and he realized just how high up he had been. Oh shit, the boot isn't going to be enough. I'm going to go splat. He was worried, but his treacherous brain flashed the image of his fall with all might in his head. Wait, Uraraka had a zero-gravity quirk. He searched for Uraraka, using his quirk sight, as well as normal sight, and saw her standing beneath him, floating on some rubble. Seemed she had the same idea. He grabbed onto her quirk and boosted it as much as he could, and he could see her surprise from here as her arms started to glow bright pink. She held her arms out, ready to smack him when he close enough, and yelped when a beam of pink light erupted from her palms, hitting Izuku. He felt his weight leave him, his descent slowing as his gear weighed him down, slowly floating to the ground. He cut off the boost to Uraraka as he hit the ground and passed out. His body stayed upright, but he was unconscious. Uraraka guided his body to the ground, laying him down, before removing her quirk. Her head was spinning. She was still getting over the boost of absolute power felt right before using her quirk from a distance. She had never done that before. Wait, that Itsuka said he could manipulate others' quirks. Did he just do something to mine? That's freaking amazing. She hadn't realized she had yelled out that last bit until she was smacked on the head by a walking stick in the shape of a syringe. Dear, I know that was stressful, but please be quiet. Look at him. He is exhausted. Uraraka looked at the old lady, who was now staring at Izuku like she had seen a ghost. Holy crap, has it really been that long? Uraraka had to strain hard to hear that, the old lady mumbling it just under her breath. Anyway, right? Does anyone have any injuries? She had snapped her eyes away from Izuku and had called for the robo-nurses to pick him up in a stretcher. There were a few here and there, but most people were too busy talking about the blonde kid who jumped into the zero-pointer and took it down. Uraraka was looking at the retreating robo-nurses with awe. Itsuka had said he could manipulate quirks, not that he was a fucking badass. Izuku awoke a few minutes later to see a deflated All Might, Eraserhead, and oh my god, Recovery Girl. He snapped up in his seat, gushing and spewing out facts from her career, but she didn't seem to notice. She and Eraserhead were staring at his file, Eraserhead showing her something, and All Might was sitting beside his bed. He stopped his ranting and looked at All Might. All Might, why are you here? The deflated man's head snapped up at this, and he started to flounder. Well, you see, He wanted to see you, kid. He was worried after he heard what you did. Toshi always has been a worrier. I contacted him. He wanted to know how you had done in the exam. Showed up a few minutes before it ended. He tapped Recovery Girl on the shoulder, and she looked up with a jolt, looking over at Izuku. She took a deep breath before speaking. Don't worry, young man. Nothing is broken. You had a sprained ankle from kicking through some pretty thick glass, but that was a quick fix. You'll probably be tired, although that's mostly from boosting young Uraraka's quirk like that. She looked away, and while Izuku couldn't see her face, he could tell she was on the verge of crying. Recovery Girl? Is everything okay? He tried to keep his voice steady, but he was exhausted, and it came out sounding impatient. Oh yes. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. You're fine to go now, young man. Goodbye. She ran as fast as an old lady could into the private office section of the infirmary, and the door locked. Izuku was worried about her, but she didn't seem to want to talk to him. Eraserhead, I'm going to go home now. I need like a full day's sleep. Aizawa gave the boy a look and nodded. God, do I know how that feels. Izuku got up and left the office. He was fairly confident about the practical exam, and he knew he aced the written test, so maybe when he gets in, he can talk to Recovery Girl. The week between the test and when his results arrived was hell for him. While Aizawa gave him a rest day, the rest of the week was dedicated to almost nonstop training. Whether it be pure stamina or practicing his technique by sparring, by Friday afternoon, he was ready to sleep through the weekend. His mom was trying to keep him awake until his normal sleep time, not wanting him to mess up his sleep schedule when she noticed the letter sitting in front of their door. Izuku, it's here. The letter. She ran into the lounge room to see him now fully awake. He opened the letter, and a tired man appeared on the screen. Why do I have to do this? Isn't this All Might's job? There is a laugh from off-screen, and Izuku recognizes it as Nizu. Why Eraserhead? I'm sure he would want to hear his results from his teacher, don't you think? Izuku froze. He never told anyone who was training him. Did Eraserhead? Whatever, but I get to sleep after this. Well, problem child, you did all right. You got 52 villain points. Well done, or whatever. Aizawa glared at, presumably Nizu, as a hand appeared on the side of the screen, hurrying him. But that isn't the only thing about being a hero. While everyone else ran, which was a logical reaction, you ran towards the zero-pointer, you jumped into it, and you saved Uraraka Achako. Highly irrational, but I digress. He sighed and flipped over the paper he was holding. For your heroic actions throughout the exam, saving students and stuff, as well as risking yourself to save the girl, you have been awarded 65 rescue points, putting you at a total of 117 points. Well done, problem child. Not only am I stuck with you for a few years, you beat my score from when I was a teen. Izuku was gobsmacked. He had been expecting that he would get in, but with 117 points? He was ecstatic, and apparently so was Inko, as she squealed at the end of the video, wrapping Izuku into a giant hug, already starting to plan a celebration. He humored her for a few minutes, before stopping her when someone knocked on their door. He walked over and opened it, revealing a man who looked ready to pass out. Eraserhead, sir. What can I do for you? Aizawa put a hand over his face and groaned. Too loud, problem child, too loud. He came in and sat on the couch, where the projection was paused at the end of the video. See, this is why I told Nizu I didn't need to film it. I could have just told you. But no, I have to stay awake and record a useless video. Whatever, you've seen it now. Just wanted to come past and ask your mother if I can take her up on that offer of a room for the night. My place is getting fumigated and I need to sleep. Izuku was stunned for a second, Eraserhead wanted to sleep in his house. Inko popped her head around the corner and flashed him a smile. Of course you can stay the night, Eraserhead. Aizawa nodded as thanks and headed towards the back room. Also, kid, I didn't tell the other staff about our training. Nizu figured it out on his own. No clue how. So this acceptance was all you. Izuku let go of some guilt he didn't even know he had been holding and thanked him before Inko came back and ushered him into the room, turning off the lights. Aizawa was asleep before he hit the bed. The days after he got accepted were awesome. Inko had planned a party, and Izuku had spent the days leading up to it out and about with Momo and Itsuka, going to the arcade, training, etc. He was quite surprised to see who had accepted the invitations to the party though. Night had rolled around, and the Midoriya household was packed. There was obviously the Yarozus and Kindos, but the Bakugas were also invited, as well as Aizawa, All Might, Tashinori, he thought. His name is Tashinori, Present Mike, and Midnight, all in their civilian personas. He was currently playing Uno with his number 1 and number 2 heroes, along with Momo and Itsuka, and he was flipping out on the inside, as he calmly said, "And that's me out of cards. I win again." Aizawa gave him a death stare, backed up by his friends, while Tashinori just laughed. "Izuku, my boy, how are you so good at this?" He was still trying to hold back laughter at how much Aizawa looked like he wanted to strangle the boy. Who knew he was this serious while playing Uno? Izuku was laughing now as well. "I'm not sure, Tashinori. We used to play it all the time during sleepovers, so I guess practice?" Tashinori lost the battle and started laughing, as Aizawa snatched the cards and started to shuffle them, mumbling something along the lines of, "I'm gonna win this time." Inko walked into the room, taking off her oven mitt. "All right, everyone, dinner is ready. Come get some grub." There was a mad dash into the kitchen by anyone who had been there before. No one could compete with Inko's katsudan. She waited until everyone was seated before she spoke up again. "I would just like to say congratulations to our young heroes-to-be tonight. Well done to all of you for getting into U.A." There was a yell from the rest of the people celebrating their success. Izuku stood up and spoke as well. "Here's to us. Let's kick this hero course's ass." The other 3 kids copied him, and his mom smacked him for swearing, but Izuku had never been happier. He will be a hero. He will make his dad proud. Chapter 6. The first day. The day finally came for the students to move into the dorms. They were packing up Izuku's stuff into boxes, and Kendo was teasing Izuku. "Really? You have 3 of the same All Might collectible?" "Why?" She was on the verge of laughing. He really did have 3 identical figures of a young age All Might. "What? What's wrong with having lots of collectibles, Itsuka? I know exactly how many martial arts movies you have. You can't talk about my figurines." This, surprisingly, shut her up, grumbling while continuing to pack. They were excited to begin their training, excited to start their journey to becoming heroes, and goddamn, was this slow packing frustrating them. "You know what? Let's leave the posters and the figures. I'll need them here when I come back to visit anyway." Itsuka laughed and stopped packing figurines. She did notice Izuku pocketing his limited edition Eraserhead figurine though. Inko was pottering around the house, cleaning things and making food, putting on a smile for Izuku, but on the inside, she was conflicted. She knew he was strong and that he deserved to be in the hero course, but she would never stop worrying for her baby. There was a loud knock on the door, and Izuku sprinted out to get it, Itsuka barely seeing him run. She still couldn't believe that he could move so fast, even after seeing what had happened during his exam, which the goggles had recorded, and watching him run around first person had made her a bit nauseous, especially when he attacked the zero-pointer. Izuku called back to Itsuka, notifying her that Momo had arrived. She stopped packing and went to greet her, surprised to see 2 large men standing next to her. "Dad said to bring Morimoto and Wakeo to help you move." Izuku smiled at her, letting the 2 men through, who went into Izuku's room and started to bring boxes down to the street. So, Itsuka, now jobless, tried to fill the gap in the conversation. "You guys want to play Super Smash Bros. 27? They just released a new fighter, some skeleton dude with glowing eyes." Izuku perked up at this, and Itsuka laughed on the inside. Something new meant he had something to analyze. And when he was analyzing was the only time Momo or Kendo beat him, as he was too distracted with his tests to focus on kicking their ass. They went into the living room and started to play SSB-27, and were saddened when Izuku picked up the new fighter extremely quickly, kicking their ass with him after 2 matches. It's not fair, Zuku. How in God's name are you so good at this? He just shrugged. Aizawa has me practicing my analytical skills and my reaction time as well as my body, so I guess, practice? Itsuka gave him a death stare. You can't use that bullshit explanation with me like you did with Tashinori. He just laughed. Seriously, just practice working in tandem with natural skill. As they waited for Morimoto and Wakeo to finish packing the car, they continued to play. And as they played and talked, they were all trading theories on who would be their teacher, as they were all in Class 1A, Momo getting in on recommendations. The 2 movers finished packing the car, and, saying goodbye to Inko, the 3 of them sat in the back, driving towards UA. As they arrived at the gate, Izuku stopped, staring at the building. The 2 girls noticed this and laughed. Come on, Zuku, it's just a building. We need to get to unpacking now. You can stare at it later, she said, shaking him slightly. Yes, come on now, Izuku. We should get ready before others start to arrive and make it harder to move around. Momo pushed him towards the dorms, pushing a box into his hands. He shook himself out of his trance, nodded, and moved towards his new home. They were surprised to see someone had arrived before them, a boy that reminded Izuku too much of Aizawa to be a coincidence. He was asleep on the front step of the dorm room, his one bag used as a pillow. Izuku walked up to him and slowly shook him awake. Hey man, you alright? The boy woke up with a start, and Izuku had to dodge the punch sent towards his face. Thank you, Aizawa, for the stupidly hard training. Dude, chill, I don't bite. He smiled at the déjà vu he got from that sentence. The boy looked up at him and scooted back, mumbling softly. Sorry, didn't mean to attack you. Izuku let his smile grow bigger, and Itsuka thought that he might be blinding the boy with how bright he was being. No worries, man. The form in that punch was quite impressive, especially as you had just woken up. Where did you train? Izuku already knew to answer to this, though, as he had been on the receiving end of those punches for months now. The boy looked down again, before standing up and mumbling again. He still couldn't believe that this boy, who he had almost punched, was being friendly. I train with my dad, he's really good. Izuku laughed at this, slightly surprised. He must be a great teacher if you were able to do that half asleep. Now, how about we go inside and unpack, mister? He flashed a smile towards the boy, silently asking his name. Hitoshi, Aizawa Hitoshi. Sorry for trying to punch you. The boy scurried inside, opening the now unlocked door. Izuku looked back at the 2 girls and smiled. Well, come on then, we got some unpacking to do, before running inside and heading up towards his room. He spent a few hours unpacking and setting everything up, and by the time he was done, there were a few more people in the rooms around him, and for a moment, he studied their quirks. From the room next to his left, he could feel conflicting energies, a twilight zone between absolute hot and absolute cold. He pondered what kind of quirk would give a dual effect, noting it down in his mind. From the room to his right came the impression of speed inside a mechanical whirlwind, almost like feeling a car driving right past you at 200 kilometers per hour. He had felt something similar before when Ingenium had been in town and had his suspicions, but he didn't want to scare anyone off just yet, so he filed it away for later. He was going through the quirks of people within range, only about 16 people at the moments, pondering why there were 2 people who had something to do with controlling light and how their quirks differed, when he felt a quirk he had been familiar with his whole life, or at least the entire time he could sense quirks. Pure, potential explosive force entered his area, and he nodded. Of course, Kachan would get into 1A. How could I think otherwise? He knew that in a fight against robots, when he could go all out, Kachan would have been in his element. He finished unpacking and headed down into the common area. Kendo was already there, but Momo had yet to finish. He wondered which of her beds she had brought, hopefully not her big one. There were a few others down there, talking in their groups, who looked up when he entered the room. Only one of them interested him, though. He ran towards the boy, grabbing him into a hug. Tokoyami. Man, it's been way too long. I haven't seen you since we were, what, 9? The bird boy was a bit frazzled, but eventually caught on. Midoriya, It is indeed good to see you again. I'm glad you were able to make it into the hero course. He looked over to the girl that had been sitting on the couch next to him. Sue, has my head changed in any way, shape, or form? Sue, a girl with large eyes and huge hands, Izuku noted, seemed a little surprised by the question before answering. Not a bit, Tokoyami. Why would it? She cocked her head to the side. Ah, that's on me. When I first met Tokoyami, I didn't have much control over my quirk, and I kinda reverted his head back to a human. Suyu seemed completely confused at this statement, cocking her head to the side again curiously. Fine. Tokoyami, do you mind if I show her? Izuku made sure he asked first. Some people could get stressed if he removed their quirk suddenly. Tokoyami nodded, and Izuku cut off his quirk. Suyu gasped as his head started to shrink and morph until it was once again a human head with messy black hair. She was staring at him, in awe of what had happened. Whoa, that's so cool. A shout from the staircase caught Izuku's attention. He vaguely remembered pulling this guy from the path of a falling robot. His bright red eyes were staring at Tokoyami and at Izuku. How did you do that? He was running towards the small group now, and Izuku chuckled. He had been around people who were used to his quirk for so long. He had forgotten how funny people's first reactions could be. Well, long story short, it's part of my quirk. I can manipulate the quirks of others, including, but not limited to, turning them off. Rockboy was staring at him with a smile on his face. Holy crap, that's awesome. If I may ask, how did you pass the exam? Doesn't seem like that would be very useful against bots. Izuku laughed. Yeah, it was absolutely useless against the machines. That's why I took in my 3 support items. The others looked at him confused. Had they not know about the 3 support items? Did you guys not know you could bring stuff in if you filed the right forms? He asked, and as they shook their heads, he wondered what exactly these guys' quirks were. Before even he knew it, his most recent notebook was out in his hands. If you guys got in with no gear, you must have awesome quirks. I can get a rough idea just by looking at you, but I don't know specifics. As he had been talking, he let his hold of Tokoyami's quirk go, and the boy's head reverted back to its bird shape. A boy with yellow hair that, to Izuku, looked like a human thundercloud, put his hands up, stopping his rant. What do you mean you can get a rough idea by looking at us? Izuku froze. He had wanted to keep that part a secret, but he wasn't very good at keeping them, it seemed. Well, it's kinda hard to explain. Basically, I can see you, and then I can see you. My range is about 100, maybe 110 radius now due to my training, and I can sense the quirks of people in range. For example, your quirk feels like a thundercloud on a stormy day, pure potential electric energy. I'm guessing I'm close to what your quirk is. The boy looked at him, shocked hot. Hit the nail on the head, my man. My quirk is electrification. I can release large amounts of electricity, but if I overdo it, I can fry my brain for a bit, making me super dumb. Izuku was already making notes next to a preliminary sketch of the boy, nodding as he talked. Itsuka smacked him on the back of the head. Zuku, stop taking notes on people for 5 minutes. You just met the guy, she said, before flashing the boy an apologetic smile. How about this? He is Izuku Midoriya, and my name is Itsuka Kendo. Nice to meet you. She nodded over to the redhead and the blonde, who nodded as well. Kirishima Ijiro. At your service, my man, he said, punching the air in front of him with a hardened arm. Itsuka placed another hand on Izuku's shoulder as he started to vibrate with excitement, and grabbed the notebook away from him. And I'm Kaminari Denki. Pleased to meet you, dude. Your quirk is so cool. Izuku flushed at this. His mom and his friends always said it, but he still wasn't used to it. It's all right. I don't have any physical stuff that I can do with it, though, just my normal body. Another voice interrupted the group. Neither does Eraserhead, the underground hero, but he still fights and wins. The purple-haired boy, Hitoshi, had walked downstairs and had been listening in on the conversation. Izuku started grinning even wider and had somehow snatched his notebook of Itsuka and opened Eraserhead's page. I know. Eraserhead's my favorite hero. He's one of my greatest inspirations. He is so amass. Itsuka groaned and facepalmed. She was able to knock Izuku out of some of his rants without hurting him, but when Eraserhead was involved, it was near impossible to snap him out of it. You have no idea what you just released, she said to Hitoshi, who was looking at the ranting Izuku with a smirk. He could go like this for hours before snapping out of this. I think the record is 3-inch. Kaminari snorted as Izuku went into an in-depth analysis of Eraserhead's abilities. 3 hours of this. Man, he's really into this stuff, isn't he? They heard footsteps on the staircase, and Momo walked into the common room. Kaminari felt like he was about to have a heart attack. You have no idea. And Itsu, his record is 3.5 hours, but fortunately for you, you didn't have to be there for that 1 inch. They all laughed as Izuku continued and chatted for the rest of the night, eventually getting into a very serious card game, before they all retired to their rooms, ready for the first day of class. Izuku woke up in the common room, not remembering falling asleep. He checked his watch. SHIT only got around 15 minutes till class. He got up and sprinted towards his room, nearly bowling over Kaminari as he ran past them into his room, taking a shower and getting ready for the day. He finished his preparations and sprinted to his homeroom, searching for 1A. He arrived at the door and could sense about 14 people in there already, 5 other than him coming towards the room, and Aizawa approaching slowly, on the floor. Crawling? Maybe he doesn't want to leave the sleeping bag. He chuckled as he entered the room. He was immediately hit with a wall of sound, people chatting, a blue-haired boy yelling at Kachan for having his feet on the desk, and Itsuka snapping with an enlarged hand, trying to calm everyone down. Kachan stopped arguing with the boy as soon as he walked in, snorting. Good. I didn't know if you had made it or not. Was gonna kill you if you didn't show up. The blue-haired boy seemed shocked that he would threaten him and turned towards Izuku. Izuku mentally high-fived himself. He had guessed right. The boy was approaching him in a weird power walk, introducing himself. Greetings. My name is Ida Dash. Tenya, right? Ingenium's little brother? Don't worry. The only reason I knew is because your quirks are so similar, and you have blue hair as well. He shrugged at Ida's confused face. I'm Izuku Midoriya. The boy started to chop his hands through the air again. Ah yes, the one who took down the 0-pointer and scored first place in the exam. I must congratulate you on your performance, as well as how easily you saw through the exam's special marking criteria. As he talked, Izuku could see Kachan's face go from disinterested to annoyed to furious at the mention of the 0-pointer. Deku, what the fuck is he talking about? Ida seemed to realize his mistake at this and was about to say something when Izuku cut him off. He swallowed his concern about Kachan and notified the class about Aizawa. Don't worry about it now, guys. Teacher's here. He pointed over his shoulder towards what the other students assumed was a giant yellow caterpillar. Good catch. Now get into your seats. Aizawa got up and shed his sleeping bag, walking to the podium. Welcome. I am your homeroom teacher. I expect you to be ready for class. That means quiet and seated before I get here tomorrow. He looked over the class, eyes stopping for a minuscule moment on Hitoshi and Izuku. His face grew into a smirk, and Izuku paled. Aizawa didn't smirk like that if he wasn't plotting something. Now, everyone get into your PE uniforms and meet me at Training Building C. He pulled sets of uniforms out of his sleeping bag and walked out of the room. The class was quiet for a moment before people started to talk about their teacher. Uraraka tapped Itsuka on the shoulder. Man, he's scary. I wonder who he is, though. So you spoke up as well. Well, if he is our teacher, doesn't that mean he's a prop hero? Rock Boy, Kirishima, Izuka thought. Gotta actually remember people's names, butted in. I've never seen him before. Maybe he's one of those super manly underground heroes. The class continued to talk for a bit as they walked down to the changing rooms, not knowing what was coming next. Aizawa sighed. He could hear the class erupt into theories about who he was, and prayed that Izuku and Hitoshi kept their mouths shut. He didn't hear any input into the theories from them and assumed that they had taken the rationale option. He had looked over the class list for this year and was slightly annoyed that most of them seemed to have potential. At least last year's 1A he could expel, giving him a year of good sleep. There was Izuku, obviously, and Aizawa could see potential flowing off of him in waves. With his quirk, Aizawa was wondering if would even be needed after Izuku graduated. It saddened him a bit, but Aizawa was a rational man and focused on the fact that it meant there would be another great hero on the streets. There was Hitoshi as well, and Aizawa smiled after checking no one was watching him. His adopted son was a bright spot in his life, but it would be even harder to hide the fact he had a kid from Nemuri now that his kid was attending UA. He knew Hitoshi had potential as well, but did wish he had taken to physical training as Izuku did. He was still pretty scrawny, but Aizawa hoped to buff him up throughout his 4 years at UA. There were some obvious frontrunners, his 2 recommendation students, Shoto Todoroki and Momo Yaozu, who both had fantastic quirks, and Katsuki Bakugu. But he could see Shoto holding himself back, limiting himself to his ice during the practical exam for recommendation students. Momo seemed to have excellent ideas for her quirk, and her friendship with Izuku had surprised him, but he didn't really care about that. That will probably help her. Izuku is a strategizing powerhouse. If he can think off what's needed in a fight before it starts, Momo will have time to make it. Katsuki was another problem child. Aizawa knew this. Scoring second place in the practical exam with 77 villain points and not a single rescue point, Aizawa knew he was a powerhouse. He would have to keep an eye on him. There were a few he would keep an eye on during the upcoming test, such as Hagakure Toru, whose quirk was just being invisible. He didn't know how she had gotten through the entrance exam. Nizu said something about her making an excellent point about not being able to prove she didn't destroy X amount of robots. He didn't really like that, and kept her in mind as an expulsion candidate. Pony was another one that he should keep an eye on. While she was good at Japanese, she was nowhere near fluent. Maybe he could get one of the students to tutor her for extra credit. Izuku would probably do it for free. He mentally noted to ask him later. Itsuka had surprised him by being in his class. Vlad had expressed interest in her, but Nizu had placed her in 1A. He had said something about already having great cooperation with Momo and Izuku, which Aizawa could understand. He didn't think that anyone could have bad cooperation with anyone until he met Bakugu. The class started to arrive one by one until all 20 students were standing in front of him, confused. Uraraka spoke up. "Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't we be going to orientation?" Aizawa shook his head. "No, you are here to learn how to become heroes, not listen to that damn rat rave on for 2 hours. UA teachers are given much more leniency in their classes, meaning I can do whatever I please." He flashed a sadistic grin her way. "So for now, we will be doing a quirk evaluation test. Bakugu, come up here." He grunted, walking into the circle. Aizawa threw him a softball. "Now Bakugu, what was your record for the softball throw in high school?" Bakugu thought for a moment. "About 82 m." Aizawa nodded. "Good. Now, throw the softball with your quirk." Bakugu started to grin as he stretched. "I'm gonna blow these fuckers away." He winded up his pitch and released with a shout of "die." The ball went flying, out of sight against the blue sky, before Aizawa's phone beeped a few seconds later. 752.4 m. "Well done, you can go back now." Bakugu was smirking as he walked back, loving the spotlight Aizawa had shone on him. "Now, one more thing. I think of myself as a very rational person. If I don't see any potential in you, I won't teach you. That being said, whoever scores last on this test is going to be expelled." Izuku sighed inwardly at the sadistic smile he had on his face as he said that. He knew he was serious. He better show his class what he could do. Most of the tests were easy enough. Grip strength, seated toe touch, sidestepping, they all came easily to Izuku. He didn't win any of these events. Shoji winning the grip strength with 564 kilograms of pressure, Mina nearly doubling over in the flexibility tests, and Kachan winning the sidestepping with timed explosions. He didn't win, but he scored pretty highly. He got an average score in the softball test, getting around 156 m, and was amazed at Uraraka's score of infinity. The tests kept on, until the test he had been looking forward to the most, the 50-meter dash. He was paired up against Bakugu, who was unaware of his training with Aizawa, unaware of his body's new capabilities. "Hey Deku, you better not screw this up. I want to be the indisputable winner here." Izuku just nodded as he got himself in position for the sprint. Bang! The gunshot went off, and so did Izuku. Pushing off the starting platforms, he pushed himself as fast as he could, blitzing past Kachan, who was using his explosions to propel himself. 3.12 seconds, the robot at the end of the track announced, as Izuku flashed past it. 4.31 seconds, as Kachan blew past. There was a beat of silence before all of the class except for Momo, Itsuka and Uraraka started yelling. What the? DKU, what the actual fuck was that? Izuku broke out into a smile before turning to Kachan. Kachan, whatever do you mean? You told me to not screw it up, so I did my best. The rest of the class quietened at this. They had known each other for a day and a half, but they all knew not to fuck with Katsuki Bakugo. If Izuku was brave enough to, how badass was he? Deku, if you think this means anything, it doesn't. I'm gonna kick your ass and be the indisputable #1 hero. He yelled at Izuku before storming off towards the bathroom. Izuku looked over towards the crowd and saw Kirishima holding his heart, crying. So manly. The rest of the tests went smoothly, Izuku coming second in the long-distance race, Momo creating a motorized scooter, causing Izuku to spend the last 3 minutes of his run laughing. Izuku got himself a comfortable third place overall, with first place going to Shoto Todoroki, second to Momo, who was ecstatic, and fourth was Kachan's. Toru, an invisible girl, came last and sat down in front of Aizawa, concerned, getting ready to pack up her things and go home. Aizawa looked over the class, letting the sadistic smile back out. Oh, and just by the way, none of you are going to be expelled. That was a logical deception to get you to push yourselves to your limits. As Toru started cheering and the rest of the class laughing, Izuku went over to Momo, holding his hand up for a high five. Hell yeah, Mo. You killed it. She gave him the high five and leaned in for a hug, before stopping and blushing. Izuku turned around and saw a girl with bright pink skin staring at them with a shit-eating grin. Mo, huh? You two seem pretty close, she said in a teasing voice. The girls in the class giggled along with her, and Izuku could see he was getting the stink eye from Kaminari. Izuku, as oblivious as ever, just shrugged. Of course we are. Mo and I have been friends since we were 6. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder as he said this, waving his arm in front of them. Mina started giggling even harder and turned back towards the rest of the girls. He let go of Momo's shoulder and looked at her confused. I wonder what they're on about, Momo facepalmed. He really was an innocent little cinnamon roll. They were about to leave when Izuku, now not focused on the testing, felt 3 familiar quirks coming towards him, one at blindingly fast speeds. Izuku barely had time to prepare himself as a barreling blue blob crashed into his back. Hell yeah, Izubro. I can't believe you got third. You were so fast during the 50-meter sprint. The rest of the class were surprised to see a boy pop out of the ground, but they were even more surprised at the fact he was naked. A third boy quickly ran up to Mirio, holding his pants, softly scolding him. Damn it, Mirio. You know our teachers say to wear your special pants if you intend on using your quirk. Mirio just shrugged, smiling at the class. Greeting Class 1A. My name is Mirio Tagoda. These are my friends Nijire Hato and Tamaki Yamajiki. We are here to kidnap Izubro. The class was shocked as Nijire grabbed Izuku, held him over her head, cackling while sprinting away. Aizawa looked like he was about to go after them, before shrugging and walking back to the staff room. Mina looked at Momo confused. Yao Momo, who were they? Momo was surprised at the nickname, but smiled. She had trained with Mirio for about as long as she had Izuku, and was familiar with his group of friends. That, my dear classmates, was UA's big 3. Izuku's been best friends with them for most of our lives. The entire class stopped. Momo paused as she saw Bakugo's face turn to pure rage before he exploded away, following the big 3. The rest of the class, as they walked back to get changed, were pestering Momo and Itsuka for details. They told them about how the big 3 were the 3 people closest to all might in power and skill, even among the pros. Holy crap, and you 3 are their friends? That's freaking amazing. I wonder if he could get them to help train us. Kirishima was hyped to have such manly people possibly available to spar with. Momo shook her head laughing. I'll check with them later. We really have to get back to class. 1A groaned, but followed her towards the changing rooms. Momo wasn't sure, but she thought she heard a few of them mumble. Yes, mum friend. The big 3, plus Izuku, were wailing through the main building chatting, as they hadn't seen each other for a while. Izuku was going over his newest ideas for Mirio's costume when they were interrupted. DKU. The big 3 stopped as they heard the familiar nickname. Nijire, still holding Izuku over her head, turned to face the boy who was rapidly approaching them. What the fuck else don't I know about you? Spill it, you shitstain. Mirio had seen Nijire angry before. People had picked on Izuku before, but they had all heard stories of what Bakugu was like before Izuku got his quirk. Well, if it isn't Kachan. Mirio shuddered at the tone Nijire was using. Kachan just got angrier. You can't fucking call me that. And no one can but my rival. Nijire giggled, but it was anything but lighthearted. It was menacing. Mirio shuddered, and Tamaki hid behind him. Well then, I'll remember that. But just by the way, here are a few things you will remember. Izuku does not have to tell you anything. You will not threaten him again, or I will beat the shit out of you, and you will watch your language around me. Same reason. She put on her most innocent smile, and it scared Izuku. How about no fuck dash? He was halfway through the sentence when Nijire socked him in the cheek, now holding Izuku with one hand. I told you to watch your language. Kachan grumbled and walked off, mumbling not worth it underneath his breath. Wone, was that really necessary? Izuku asked, not attempting to break free. She turned and smiled at him. Of course it was. No one threatens my little Izu. Mirio laughed out loud, while Tamaji just chuckled under his breath. Miro calmed himself and pointed down the hall. Okay, Hedu, you gotta let him go now. He has to get to class. And OHSHIT. So do we. As he and Tamaki sprinted off towards the classroom for 3A. Nijire ran to the door for 1A, plopped Izuku down in front of it, and ran off. Bye Izu, see you later. Izuku shook his head. He couldn't let himself get abducted after every class, not with the number of questions he expected from this little experience. He goes through the rest of the day, aces English with present mic, does well in math with ectoplasm, and nerds out during modern hero art history with midnight. He is heading towards the dorms with Itsuka, waving goodbye to Momo as she was staying behind to talk to Aizawa. Hey Midoriya, hey Kendo. Izuku turns to see a girl whose name he didn't know, as well as Uraraka running up to them. He waved back, stopping to wait for them to catch up. Hey Uraraka. Who is this? He waved at the horned girl, who was partially hiding behind Uraraka. Uraraka smiled. It's all right, Midoriya. You can call me Ochako. Can T have my hero calling me my last name, can I? Itsuka was laughing now, and Izuku smiled. Of course, Ochako. Only if you call me Izuku. He turned to the other girl. Hey there. My name is Izuku Midoriya. What's yours? He could see the gears turning in her head. She spoke in broken Japanese. Me Pony Tsunatori. Please call me Pony. Izuku nodded, smiling. Of course, Pony. I hope I'm not overstepping, but you're not from around here, are you? She smiled and nodded. Yes, I am from America. I come overseas to go UA. He chuckled, bowing slightly and speaking in fluent English. Of course, Pony. I welcome you to Japan and to UA. She squealed slightly, speaking in English as well. Oh my God, thank you. I've yet to meet another student who can speak English as well as you. You have no idea how refreshing it is. I'm learning Japanese, but I'm struggling a bit. At the last bit, her smile fell slightly. Izuku frowned. He couldn't have that. He continued in English. Well then, maybe I could help you. I am fluent in both, so I could tutor you in Japanese. Pony's face lit up. Really? That would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Izuku. She clapped her hands over her mouth. Sorry, when I speak English for a bit, I revert back to some American culture things. We call each other by our first names over there. Don't worry about it, Pony. You asked me to call you by your first name, so you can call me by mine. She smiled at him. Itsuka and Ochako were chatting in Japanese, looking over at Izuku and Pony every now and then as they chatted in English. As they entered the inside of the dorms, Ochako sprinted off to her room, waving goodbye. Pony followed her upstairs, thanking Izuku for helping her learn Japanese. Crazy first day, huh? I mean, we get our quirks tested, you run 50m in 3.1 seconds. Momo makes a freaking scooter, our teacher lies to us, you get kidnapped. This school is going to be the death of all of us. Itsuka was laughing as she said it, but Izuku knew she was right. UA was going to kick their asses. Chapter 7, Battle Training, Part 1. The next day, Izuku woke up super early, and he didn't know why. He got up and his clock told him he was around 6:20. He groaned. Why on earth was he awake? Probably because of the knocking on his door. That sounds about right. What he didn't expect was to see Aizawa standing in his doorway, scowling. Where the hell were you? Izuku was confused. Did he promise to do something? Aizawa saw the confusion and grabbed Izuku by the ear. Just because you got into UA doesn't mean you get to slack off on your training. From now on, every morning you meet me in the gym Gamma at 5:30 inch. Aizawa let go of Izuku's ear. Get ready. If I can't kick your ass during morning training, you're going for a run. Izuku walked back into his room and got ready. He knew it was a terrible idea to argue with Aizawa, especially when he had already pissed him off. He got into his training clothes and put on his iconic red shoes. He ran down the stairs and stopped when he saw Aizawa sleeping on the couch. As he went to shake him awake, a voice from behind stopped him. Izuku? Shouldn't you let Mr. Aizawa sleep? Pony walked down the stairs, and Izuku froze. If he didn't wake Aizawa up, he would get in trouble for not waking him up for training. If he told Pony why he was waking him up, he would get in trouble for revealing their relationship. He could ask her not to tell anyone. She seemed like if he asked, she would keep the secret. He sighed, resigning himself to his fate. In English, he said, "Good morning, Pony. We are just about to head out and do some extra training. Aizawa has been my trainer for almost a year now, but I need you to keep it a secret from the others for now, okay?" Pony smiled as he talked in English and nodded as he finished. Of course, Izuku. This can be our little secret. She winked at him as she talked. But you owe me one. And ask Teach if I can join in sometimes, she said, laughing menacingly as she walked back up the stairs, and Izuku could almost hear the smirk in her voice. He laughed to himself as he woke Aizawa up. What do you want, problem child? He asked as Izuku continued to shake him slightly. Mr. Aizawa, sir, you fell asleep before you could, and I quote, kick my ass with training, Aizawa sighed, nodding as he got up. Fine, let's go. Aizawa made Izuku sprint for a half-hour straight, grinning sadistically as he did. The next half-hour after that he sparred, and Izuku was barely able to keep up after the run. He walked back into the dorms with 45 minutes left until class. Ida saw him coming back into the dorms and got up from the couch. Midoriya, you should be ready for class by now. It is way too close to starting time for you to still not be ready. Izuku quickly ran up to his room and had a shower. He gets into class with 5 minutes before the start. I'm glad you could finally make it, Midoriya. I was worried you were going to be late. Izuku nodded and silently started towards his seat. He waved to Momo and Itsuka. Good to see you up and at M. Greeny. Wouldn't want to be late for whatever Teach is going to put us through. He wished he could share his training with the two girls, but Aizawa said he only took one problem at a time. Yeah, I can't wait. Izuku tried to keep his sarcasm out of the statement, but the girls started laughing, so he probably didn't do it well. I wonder what he's going to get us to do today. Hope we don't get another threat of expulsion. I don't think Hagakure could go through that scare again. He joined them laughing. The rest of the class filtered in, Mina coming in 3 minutes late, apologizing to Aizawa. He stood up from his position, sleeping under the podium, and started talking before leaving. There were a few moments of silence from the class, but Izuku knew who was coming. He had sensed the storms of power before today. All Might came bursting through the door in an odd position. The class started buzzing with excitement. Here, coming through the door like a hero. The class started cheering at this. All Might really was a teacher. That's so awesome. Izuku heard a "he's so manly" before he heard something else. Hey kid, how you doing? I haven't seen you around UA yet dash. Izuku winced at how loud the voice was. It was clearly male, probably around Izuku's age, maybe older. And it was loud. My apologies, young Izuku. Totoya can be excitable. We don't really get to do much talking unless it's to each other. And I can only take so many stories about his old dogs before I just want to get out of here dash. This voice was much older, also a man. He sounded tired, like he hadn't had enough sleep, but was staying awake because he needed to. Shut it, Hanzo. I'm just happy to see the kid. I didn't get to last time. Was arguing with little Miss Grumpy over if Tashinori was stupid or not. Dash. You can't speak about my successor like that and not expect me to talk smack right back at you, you know. Dash. All Might had started to talk about something to do with fighting for good, pulling a bodybuilder's pose. Izuku was trying to hear him, but the voices were really loud. Guys, I have absolutely no clue what is going on here, but can guys quiet down for now? All Might is talking dash. Izuku was glad when they did quiet down, just in time for Izuku to see All Might pull out a small white card, yelling, "Battle training." Izuku was starting to get excited. He knew it would probably be hard for the others, minus Momo and Itsuka, to fight him quirkless. He knew from experience that most kids his age relied too heavily on their quirks in a fight. He wondered if the students other than Momo and Itsuka had any formal training. He grinned at the two girls, malicious intent showing in his smile. The three started laughing, unknowingly garnering the attention of Katsuki. He looked back at the sadistic grin Izuku was pulling and grunted. Deku was obviously different from the last time he had seen him. He was stronger, more confident. Maybe the nerd pulled his shit together after his quirk came. God, I hope I get to fight him, get back at him for what that blue bitch said. One of the key aspects of being a hero nowadays is looking good. Dash, damn it, Toshi, stop with all the drama. Izuku heard the older woman's voice, the one that seemed most familiar with All Might, again, and wondered who she was. She had said she was his predecessor, but what did that mean? Why could he hear any of them? It made him very curious. All Might pushed a button on a remote, and 20 containers popped out of the walls behind him. The class erupted into cheers again. They get to wear their costumes. Izuku pulled out his notebook, already starting to formulate plans and notes on how to fight his classmates. The book already had some rudimentary plans for fighting their quirks, if there was ever a situation where he couldn't turn them off, and probable fighting styles they would use once quirkless. He felt like that old-school pre-quirk superhero Owlman or something. He couldn't remember what animal the hero was named after. As he stood up, Itsuka smacked him on the head. "Come on, man. Don't go spewing all our secrets to the rest of the class." The rest of the class was staring at him. Damn, must have been mumbling. He apologized and headed to the front of the room to grab his costume. The costume that he and Mei had spent almost a year on designing, finding materials. Although after Izuku introduced Mei to Momo, that wasn't a problem anymore. The problem was detaching Mei from Momo and building the suit and gadgets to go along with it. Most of the class had gathered in front of All Might, showing off their hero costumes. All Might looked over the crowd of newbies. He briefly wondered about where young Midoriya was, before taking a closer look at the students' costumes. He was looking for specific students, the ones he had been warned to pay special attention to, for varying reasons. He found the first of Aizawa's watch list. Pony Tsunatori, the American exchange student. Hell yeah. All Might loved America. She was wearing a horse halter around her head with a lead rope dangling from the back, consisting of an orange skin-tight shirt with pale orange markings around her chest and stomach, with matching colored pants, along with a pair of fingerless gloves. She was wearing belts secured around her collarbone, biceps, and lower torso, and boots, as well as stirrups attached on either side. Hitoshi Aizawa, Eraserhead's adopted son, currently not very physically strong, but All Might could see the fire in his eyes. His costume was a near-perfect copy of Eraserhead's, other than some dark purple detailing, as well as a dark purple capture weapon. He wore some sort of mask over his face, looking slightly like a gas mask, but with speakers. Momo Yaoyorozu had been put on the watch list due to her standing as the current 11th highest in Japan for her favored martial art, her versatile quirk, and her acceptance to UA, due to recommendations. She wore a dark red sports bra and shorts, with gold trimming, and an odd wrist brace with a thick tube on it on her left arm, and what seemed to be a wrist-mounted computer on her right. She also wore tinted red goggles, with gold trim. He was just waiting for the fourth person on the list. Izuku Midoriya. He remembered the boy. Of course, he did. He was one of the only people in the world to know about All Might's injury, and All Might knew that the boy was trustworthy. So why did he keep staring at him? As the class quieted down, he was able to hear fast footsteps coming from the tunnel, as well as loud metal crashing on the ground. Wait, what? He looked behind the class to see a man in costume giving a pink-haired girl a piggyback ride, running from what looked like a large, spider-like robot. God damn it, Mei, why would you build something like this? Yep, that was definitely Izuku under that suit. Mei was cackling as they got into the open space. All Might punched the shit out of it. The class had turned around at this point, and were panicking at the robot almost double the height of All Might came crashing into the courtyard. D. Truitt. Smamish. All Might rammed his fist into the side of the bot, splitting it in two, both halves crashing into the wall behind the class. Mei started yelling. Izuku put her down. All Might, you broke it. Do you know how long it took me to build that? All Might was shocked. He had had people yell at him after a fight, of course, but for a robot? You killed my baby. Now All Might was panicking. Had there been a child piloting the robot? Had it been a mech suit of some kind? All Might, I can see your panic from here. It's not an actual baby, just a robot, so don't worry. Mei looked at Izuku like he had just stabbed her in the gut, insulted her hair, and twisted the knife. Where in God's name did such a graphic example come from? Laughter he couldn't hear spread throughout his quirk. Mei, was it? Izuku asked me to help, so I did. I did not know you treasured the robot so much, my apologies. He gave the girl a small bow, only to find that she had already run over to the wreckage, sorting through the pile. Not worth it, All Might, sir. Just leave her be. Izuku sighed as he said that, shoulders shuddering, seemingly remembering something. All Might took the opportunity to study his costume. He was on the list. After all, he didn't want to disappoint Aizawa in the first lesson. Izuku was in a tight-fitting black shirt, with gold trimmings, showing off his muscles. He had black gloves with gold knuckles, and All Might could see that they were metal. Ouch, that would hurt a lot. He had black knee-high boots with golden accents, tucked over black combat pants, with a utility belt with around 12 pouches and a golden buckle. The most impressive thing about the costume was the helmet, fully covering his head, with two golden dots on the front imitating eyes. They weren't just LEDs either. They seemed to change as Izuku talked to the others, following what All Might assumed to be his face's expressions underneath. On his back was a backpack of sorts, with a large slot on the bottom. Latched onto his right hip, a scabbard, with something All Might could only assume to be a sword, hung from his side. He looked badass if All Might was honest. When Izuku had arrived, the class didn't know what to make of it at first. He came dashing and holding a random pink-haired girl to his back, being chased by a giant robot. Jiro had heard them talking about babies or something. What she and the rest of the class were really focused on was Izuku. He looked badass due to the design and the gadgets, but she had to admit, the eyes were adorable. Momo and Itsuka seemed to agree, as they squealed and ran over to him. Zuku, you look so cool, Momo exclaimed as she hugged the boy. Itsuka rolled her eyes. Yeah, it's pretty cool, I guess. It's not fair that Mei only offered to build you a suit. It's almost as if she licked Dash. Itsuka was cut off as Mina came crashing into the group, followed by the rest of the girls. Wow, that's Midoriya. That's such a cool suit. Izuku was now being hugged by his best friend, who was now realizing was in nothing but a bra and shorts, and the arm gear he had designed for her, and was being surrounded by other girls, in everything from leather jackets to skin-tight bodysuits. Wait, what? As he looked over at people like Tsu, Uraraka, Pony, Setsuna, and Mina, his brain started to short-circuit. He pulled away from the group slightly, rubbing his hand on the back of his helmet. Man, he missed ruffling his own hair. He again noted the stink he was getting from Kaminari. Hi, Mina. Hi, guys. Yep, it's me all right. This is my costume. He did a little spin, and Momo couldn't help but giggle at the sight. Her large, very muscly, no, bad Momo, best friend spinning like a middle school ballerina. He hadn't seemed very embarrassed about it, though. All Might was starting to try and wrangle the class back on track and had to resort to snapping his fingers using OFA. The shockwave that spread throughout the courtyard silenced the class. Now then, now that's all settled, he laughed, motioning for the class to come in a bit more. They say that the clothes make the man, and you're all extremely well made. He pulled out a small bit of paper, and Izuku couldn't help but laugh. All Might had a script. You will be separated into pairs. This is an indoor combat exercise dash. He was stopped by Ida, he thought, putting his hand up and interrupting him, others joining in. Sir, how will the pairs be assigned? How much am I allowed to hurt these extras? What's the objective? This is so cool. All Might groaned, snapping his fingers again, shutting them up. I wasn't finished, you guys, he cleared his throat. This will be an indoor combat exercise. The teams will be decided by lots, and 2 teams will fight at one time. The alignment of your team, heroes or villains, will also be determined by lots. He glared at Ida when he put his hand up, and it slowly backs down to his side. The villain's job will be to protect a nuclear weapon. It's not real, of course. I wouldn't trust any of you with a grenade, let alone a nuke. Bakugo coughed. The villains will have 5 minutes to get inside the building and set up a defense. You win by either defending the bomb until time runs out or by wrapping this. He pulled out a roll of white tape around both the enemies. The hero's job will be to infiltrate the building and attempt to either capture the weapon by placing their hand on it or by, again, wrapping both enemies in the capture tape. I will now take questions, young Ida. Ida's arms sprang into the air. Isn't there a better way to determine teams than chance? All Might went to answer, but Izuku and Momo interrupted him. Well, Ida dash. Once we become pro-heroes ourselves dash, we might get into situations where we have to team up with other agencies dash. That means we have to get used to fighting with random allies against random enemies dash. This type of randomization helps us practice that. All Might was stunned at the duet of logic he had just witnessed. The class was stunned as well before Mina blurted out, Yo, that was fucking adorable, you guys. All Might snapped his fingers again before the class erupted again, silencing them. Mina was laughing and pointing to the eyes on his suit, which were scrunched up, with 2 smaller dots having appeared around on his cheeks, as well as Momo's. Right, you are you two. I can see that you're both very intelligent and strategic. Momo quickly placed her hand on Izuku's shoulder to stop him from vibrating fast enough from excitement to fall through the ground. She already knew one person who could do that. She didn't need 2. Now everybody, time to pick out the lots. Line up and grab a slip of paper, then find your partner. All Might produced a white box filled with small slips of paper. The class went up and grabbed their paper, found their partner, and got All Might to write the pairs down. The pairs were Heroes, Katsuki Bakugo and Ida Tenya versus Villains, Hyokujiro and Kaminari Denki. Heroes, Izuku Midoriya and Pony Tsunatori versus Villains, Mina Ishido and Momo Yaoyorozu. Heroes, Hitoshi Aizawa and Hagakure Toru versus Villains, Tsuyu Azui and Setsuna Tokeichi. Heroes, Kirishima Ijiro and Uraraka Achako versus Villains, Shoto Todoroki and Itsuka Kendo. Heroes, Fumikage Tokoyami and Ibara Shizuki versus Villains, Mizo Shoji and Rikido Sato. All Might couldn't wait to see the matches. He had high hopes for the group, especially young Midoriya. He had this air to him. He already knew about his injury, and he was a heroic young man. So why wasn't he already sitting the boy down and offering the power of one for all? He still thought highly of Mirio, as did Izuku, and Mirio reciprocated the feelings. Mirio was a wonderful candidate to pass OFA on to, but All Might had been unsure. It felt too structured. His predecessor, Nana, had chosen him for his spirit and mind, not because he was the best available. In fact, as a quirkless twig of a boy, to begin with, he was a terrible candidate. But she had chosen him anyway, and it almost felt right to pass it on to someone who All Might felt the same way about that Nana had felt about him. He pushed that train of thought to the back of his mind as the villain team for the first match finished setting up. The hero team was having trouble. Ida was very adamant about having a plan, and Bakugo? Well, Bakugo couldn't care less. Jesus Christ, man, shut the fuck up. You've been yapping in my ear about a plan for the last 10 minutes. If you want a plan so much, fine. Here's the plan. I go in there and kick Sparky and Hearing Aid's asses, and you grab the bomb. Ida was shocked. He knew that he could be vulgar, but arrogant and uncooperative as well. He would have his work cut out for him. They both stiffened as they heard the signal to start, along with All Might's. Everyone ready. Let's go. Ida had always been fast. He watched his speed indoors, for the most part, and had already mentally told himself to only use his boosters for kicking, as he didn't want to slam into any walls. Bakugo, on the other hand, used his extremely destructive quirk to blast his way into the building, rushing ahead of Ida. Ida shook his head as he followed them in. They got to around the 3rd floor when Bakugo slowed down, clutching his head. Goddamn Hearing Aid. Probably trying to knock us unconscious with her shitty heartbeat. While Ida didn't like the language, he recognized the analytical aspect of Bakugo. Yes, it is likely that she can hear where we are at this very moment. Ida listened to the vibrations flowing through the air, hoping to catch some variation that would confirm his theory. There was a small blip in the pattern as he uttered the words. He tapped Bakugo on the shoulder, avoiding the swipe that followed. He pointed to the roof, before tapping his ear. Bakugo scowled and nodded. They headed up higher, the sound getting louder and louder until Bakugo felt like his eardrums were going to burst. "Oh, fuck this," Bakugo yelled before smacking the wall next to him and letting off a huge explosion. They heard a screech from above them, and the sound stopped. "Get up there, Sonic. We don't have much time. I'm gonna go kick Sparky's ass." Ida activated his quirk, running up the stairs and kicking down the north side door. He evaluated the room. Bakugo was already fighting Kaminari and winning. Jiro was laying on the ground next to the wall, unconscious. Ida took the opportunity to wrap her in capture tape, just in case, and sprint towards the bomb. He didn't get a chance to, however, as Ida saw Kaminari jump back from Bakugo and smack his knees with his hands. Bakugo was gone in an instant, behind a pillar, but Ida was trapped in the open. Indiscriminate shock, 1.5 million volts. Ida yelled as his body surged with electricity and thought he saw Bakugo deliver a haymaker to a grinning Kaminari before falling unconscious. The class was watching the fight from the observation room. Izuku was glad he and Pony weren't first, as it gave him plenty of time to plan out a winning strategy. As he talked quietly with Pony in English, Mina came running up to them. "Izuku, Pony, what are you talking about? Is it how you're gonna beat me and your girlfriend?" Izuku stopped suddenly. So did Pony. Neither of them responded for a moment before Izuku spoke up. "What are you on about? I don't have a girlfriend." Izuku was genuinely confused at the statement. "You're not my girlfriend, and neither is Imo, so I don't see what you're getting at." Mina almost squealed. He was too pure. "Come on, Izuku. You call her Imo for God's sake. You've known the incredibly attractive, smart, and nice girl for over 10 years, and she's not your girlfriend? What gives?" Pony was looking away from the conversation now, face red as a beet. Izuku had a red face as well now. He was quite dense with these things, but Mina's direct approach seemed to punch through his density. "Well, Ishido, Imo has been one of my best friends for years. It's not like I'm willing to risk my friendship with her." Apparently, this was the wrong thing to say, as Mina's shit-eating grin grew wider. "So you do like her? I knew it. That's too bad. I was gonna call dibs." Mina said the last bit with a flirty tone, and Izuku started sputtering. Pony was now facing the complete opposite direction from the two of them, face entirely red. When she saw Izuku's sputtering, Mina laughed. "God, you're gonna be fun to have around, Izuku. I can tell I'm gonna love teasing you." She laughed as she sauntered off, intentionally wiggling her hips, looking back at him. He made eye contact and held it until she sat back down next to Momo. He turned to Pony and tapped her on the shoulder. In English, he said, "Sorry about that. I don't know what she was doing, but we really should focus on the exercise." As he said it, they heard a smack from the screen in the center of the room and saw Keminair eating shit after a killer haymaker from Bakugo. The heroes won, and Kachan's smirk was sighed. They left the building, heading back towards the observation room, and All Might called the next groups up to the building. Izuku breathed deeply. His legs hurt slightly from training with Aizawa in the morning, but he could do this. Their main problem would be Imo. Izuku wasn't confident in fighting her quirkless. He had never tried during his training period with Aizawa, so he didn't know how they stood anymore. Pony grabbed his arm as he was muttering, dragging him out of the building. Momo looked up from her conversation with Mina as they walked and saw this, frowning. Chapter 8, Battle Training, Part 2. Bakugo and Ida had just won their match. Kaminari and Jiro were both incapacitated, Jiro being sent to Recovery Girl. Kaminari was just sitting in the back of the observation room, a funny look on his face, letting out a small wee-a, the rest of the class laughing at him. Bakugo was sat in the back of the room, watching everyone talk about the upcoming match. He hadn't seen Deku fight for a while, but with his quirk and how toned his body looked, as well as the sword on his hip, he didn't think the two girls stood a chance. All Might caught the attention of the class as the Villian team started to set up. "Now, students, who do you think is going to win this match?" The rest of the class started murmuring as they debated. It seemed a fairly even split. Bakugo got up, walking to the front. "Deku's gonna kick their asses." How do you think Raccoon Eyes is going to fight without her quirk? He pointed to the screen showing Momo. High Class is the only one with a chance against Deku in this fight. The rest of the class looked at him confused. Only around 4 people in the class knew of his quirk. So you spoke up after him. Yeah, Midoriya can completely shut down people's quirks, right? Ashido is going to have some trouble with that. Bakuga scoffed. It's not just